So real quickly, I just want to explain, this is going to be a compilation of all my ranking every blank, so AR, SMG, bows, all of that in one video. This is going to be a long movie of all of those videos together. It is almost ranking every single weapon in Fortnite, besides like DMRs and a couple others. All of the individual videos will be linked in the description below, as well as all the credit to every single creator whose content I use in these videos. Enjoy. Sniper rifles are by far my favorite category of weapon in the entire game of Fortnite. And I've been waiting to do this video for quite a bit now, and that's going to be ranking every single sniper rifle in Fortnite history from worst to best. I must preface, I will not be including the Zapatron, the lever action rifle, or the explosive repeater rifle in this list. The Zapatron was in the game for half an hour. I don't think anybody watching this video has ever used that gun, at least in Battle Royale. And the lever action rifle and explosive repeater rifle are technically considered snipers because they have heavy bullets, but in my mind, they're more assault rifles or DMRs and not snipers, so they will not be on this list. With that being said, if you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to drop me a like down there. Use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop if you'd like to support the work that I do here on YouTube. And let's just get into it. This is going to be a good one. In my opinion, the worst sniper rifle in Fortnite history at number 14, that is the Boom Sniper. If you watch my video where I ranked every single exotic, spoiler alert, the Boom Heavy Sniper was the worst exotic of all time, and I also believe it is the worst sniper. It's just kind of outdated. When it came out, it was fun, it was unique, but it doesn't really serve a purpose anymore. Extremely low damage, right? It's going to take you to stick 3 clingers, right? You have to hit 3 sniper shots to kill somebody, right? That is not going to cut it. That's not going to work. And I genuinely believe that you are better off using any of the other snipers that are on this list over the Boom Sniper. The fact that this costs a lot of gold and there was really most of the times only 1 on the map, maybe 2, 3 at most, making it so rare and so hard to get for really just an extremely mid weapon. The only advantage you get here is you have some pretty serious spam, right? If someone's in a box and you drop a bunch of clingers on their head, you might be able to sneak one in and get some area of effect damage, but other than that, I don't see it being useful, and I think it's deserving of the worst sniper on this list. At number 13, and let's be honest, really not that far ahead of the Boom Sniper, that's going to be the automatic sniper introduced in, I believe, Season X. This sniper is just a little more versatile, and honestly, it really isn't a sniper. If it didn't have the name sniper in it, it would basically just be a DMR or even an assault rifle. And the one thing you do have going for it is, one, it's automatic, of course, that's always a good thing, and very low recoil for an automatic weapon. As well as this, it also used medium bullets instead of heavy bullets, which is obviously a huge advantage when you consider how hard heavy bullets are to find most of the time and the limit on the amount of heavy bullets that you can hold versus the amount of medium bullets that you can hold. My only concern really is if you're going to use a weapon at range like this, just use a regular bolt action sniper where you can one-shot headshot instead of doing 40 damage to the body. 40 is pretty low, and if I remember correctly, the bullet velocity also just felt super slow. So yeah, not a great weapon overall, and I would rather have a bolt action sniper over this 10 out of 10 times. And at the number 12 spot, you may be surprised to see this, but just hear me out here, that's the heavy sniper rifle. This weapon has seen an immense fall from grace. This used to be the best sniper ever, no debate, no question. And for the longest time, this was my favorite weapon in all of Fortnite. I have a couple problems with this weapon. Remember when it did 150 and 157 damage from purple to legendary rarity? Then you could justify the extremely slow reload time because you were basically just destroying everybody. Yes, the damage is lower, but it's still a pretty good amount for a sniper, right? So you're saying, what is the big problem? Well, what made the heavy sniper special back in the day? The fact that you could one-shot any wall, right? The advantage that you didn't have to worry about pickaxing or taking someone's wall, just shoot the sniper and get into their box, right? Well, the fateful update that killed the heavy sniper rifle in Chapter 4 Season 2 that lowered the damage to structures from, listen to this, 600, 630, 660, 690 to 150, 158, 165, 173. Of course, those numbers are for each increasing rarity. That is unreal and destroyed, killed the heavy sniper. And so now you have an extremely slow and clunky sniper, albeit the projectile, the actual bullet, was very fast traveling, which helped. You had a severely nerfed damage by 30, 40 hit points, and you absolutely obliterated the structure damage. This thing got nerfed into the ground and is now one of the worst snipers ever. The shining star for this weapon now is actually just the vehicle damage. I think now it does like 600, 700 100 damage to vehicles, but I don't think that that justifies putting it any higher on this list, especially when we basically just got a better version of the heavy sniper in the game now, which we'll see higher on this list. And at number 11, we have the Amban sniper rifle from Chapter 2, Season 5. That is the Mandalorian sniper. And honestly, I don't think this is a bad sniper at all. I really just had nowhere else to put it on this list, and I brought it down a bunch because it's a mythic. There's only one on the map at a time. They're hard to get. And I don't have any complaints on this list. Even though it's low on this list, it's still one-shot headshots. It's got a nice thermal scope. It sounds sick. Like, it's a cool weapon. And even though nobody used it, the ability to melee is still a pretty nice addition. My big complaint, though, is just the damage is not there. 110 damage for a mythic sniper when we have bolt action snipers in purple legendary rarity that are doing 116, 120 plus damage that are a lot more common and easier to find than this mythic item has to be noted. Again, I don't think this is a bad weapon. I think they did a good job integrating it with the Mandalorian and on the map. I just think it just kind of falls to the bottom of the list. No complaints, just not great. And at our number 10 spot, we have the Dragon's Breath sniper rifle, the exotic. And honestly, the Dragon's Breath would have been higher if it wasn't for the fact that the whole point of the weapon is completely obsolete now. Fire doesn't really spread to structures anymore like it used to back in the day. But the damage is absolutely massive here. 121 damage will absolutely get the job done, and at this point, you would take this every day over the heavy sniper. Another main problem, though, is how hard it is to get. With these exotic and mythic rarities, you really only see a couple of them on the map at a time if you're lucky. If you're not going to go out and specifically look for the NPC to buy it, there's a good chance that you may not see this weapon for 10, 15, 20 games in a row. So although it may do more damage than something like, let's say, a suppressed sniper rifle, the fact that it is rare and harder to find has to knock it down a little bit on this list. Another example of a very solid sniper rifle, one-shot headshot of course, but they are just better. And at our number 9 spot, I had actually just previously mentioned it, that's the suppressed bolt action. Some of you may have expected this to be higher on the list, and this is honestly a completely personal choice. I just didn't like the suppressed sniper a lot. I honestly have no reason for that either. I just didn't like the feel of it. I always took a regular bolt over the suppressed. And again, yeah, this is a totally personal pick because the damage on the regular bolt action sniper is higher, but you don't get the suppressed like you do here with this weapon. So honestly, it's kind of personal opinion between both and which one you choose to put higher. I just put the suppressed lower because I value the higher damage over the suppressed factor. And at number 8, we have just the classic bolt action sniper rifle, the first sniper ever introduced into the game and probably the most popular sniper. It is your classic sniper rifle. Everybody knows it. It doesn't do anything crazy good, anything crazy bad. It doesn't have any specific traits or anything. It's just your great sniper rifle. And also for this sake, let's just forget that the common bolt ever existed. The fact that it had a green uncommon rarity, which is pretty unironically common to find and pretty easy to find, that did over 100 damage for a body shot, I think pushes it higher than a lot of the weapons on this list. And if you are lucky enough to get the purple or legendary version, you're going to be doing 116 and 121 damage, which is really, really good. Again, it doesn't do anything outstanding and it doesn't do anything terrible, but the fact that it has a green rarity that's a lot easier to find than any of the other snipers on this list pushes it a little bit higher. Also, personal take here, but how satisfying was it to hit a shot back in Chapter 1 with the legendary bolt action? I mean, that feeling was great. But anyways, at our number 7 spot, that's going to be the hunting rifle. And I was even thinking about whether I should put the hunting rifle on the list or not. I mean, is it a sniper rifle? It doesn't have a scope, but it's still one-shot headshots to the head. I was a little bit torn. But since it is on this list, it's going to go at the number 7 spot, which is right in the middle of all the snipers. And that's pretty intentional because with the hunting rifle, you do kind of sacrifice long range. Of course, you can still hit those 200, 250, 300 meter snipes with the hunting rifle, but it's pretty rare, especially with no scope. But while you sacrifice the long range, you also get the best close quarters sniper rifle in the entire game. The hipfire for a sniper rifle was actually really, really tight. I'm sure you've seen plenty of hunting rifle trick shots, hipfires, and even myself, I've taken this out in a box, just pop somebody right in front of you for 100 damage and then use the shotgun. You can do that sometimes. And if I remember correctly in the loophole for Fortnite Reload, the hunting rifle has come back and I forgot how good this weapon can be in a good player's hands. I think that there's a really high skill gap with this weapon, but if you're really good with it, you are going to destroy everybody and probably outshoot multiple people with a regular sniper rifle. And at the number 6 spot is the exotic Storm Scout sniper rifle. And the only reason why the exotic Storm Scout is behind the regular Storm Scout, if you don't know, they actually have the exact same statistics, is strictly because the exotic is a lot more rare and harder to find than the regular Storm Scout was. But look, I think the Storm Scout is actually kind of an underrated sniper rifle, and it's our first semi-auto sniper on this list that can actually one-shot headshot. And for that, I think it has to go above all the bolt actions because your DPS is much, much higher with a weapon like this, pending you're hitting a headshot. The ability to fire off 5-10 shots in a row, potentially headshotting multiple people without reloading, is extremely underrated. And as well as this, you got to see where the next zone was, so you can't forget about that. That is the whole gimmick with the sniper, and it is pretty good. I won't say it's great or anything crazy, but it is a helpful advantage to have. And at number 5 is just the regular Storm Scout sniper rifle. I was thinking about putting them in the same list since they have the exact same damage, but because of how rare the exotic is, it falls one behind the regular Storm Scout. So yeah, just take everything I said about the exotic and just apply it to the Storm Scout at number 5 here. And now we are in the top 4. This is the top 1/3 of this list, and I believe they are some of the best sniper rifles. They are extremely powerful, and if you see them on the ground, I would highly recommend that you would take them. And honestly, kind of surprisingly, at our number 4 spot is the brand new Chapter 5 Season 3 Heavy Impact Sniper. I mean, let me just say something. 313 headshot damage is unreal. It's actually laughably funny. And this is exactly what the heavy sniper should be right now. Big time damage, slow reload. You're basically taking that one shot, and if you hit it, you're going to be doing big damage. If you don't hit it, you're going to be in trouble. 125 damage in the rare rarity, 131 damage in the epic rarity, and 138 damage in the legendary rarity. Yeah, that's a big shot. And not to mention, I think it does like 400 something damage to vehicles. I wish it did just a little bit more to counter the cars even more this season, but 400 damage is pretty serviceable, and it basically just like stops the cars in its tracks. It's that strong. And it's extremely satisfying to use. It feels good when you hit a shot. It sounds good. It's just that big heavy sniper rifle, and just everything the heavy sniper is now, but just buffed to the moon. At the number 3 spot, and I never thought that I would ever be saying this is a top 3 sniper rifle ever, that's the semi-auto sniper. I think before Season OG happened, I think this was unanimously known as the worst sniper rifle, and it got a massive damage buff. That's what changed everything. The damage went from 75 and 78 to 97 and 101, and that is big for one key reason, and that is because now you had the ability to one-shot headshot with the semi-auto sniper. Anytime you can one-shot headshot, instantly puts it ahead of any weapons where you cannot. I also really like what they did with the scope, making the scope smaller and more zoomed out. It just feels better to use, and that buff honestly absolutely saved the semi-auto. It was honestly kind of laughable how bad it was before Season OG. But if you have the blue rarity, especially of this weapon, 101 damage, 10 magazine size with only a 2-second reload time, I mean, you could basically just spray everybody with this thing. And surprisingly, it deserves a top 3 spot on the list for the best snipers ever. And number 1 and number 2, this was a tough one, and I kept going between the two, but I think I have a good argument here. At number 2 is the Hunter Bolt Action Sniper. Pre-nerf, this thing was absolutely dog water, but in Chapter 3 Season 4, it got a huge update where the damage went from 81, 86, 90, 95, 99 to 90, 95, 100, 105, 110. That is a big damage buff, about 10 damage for each rarity. And the even bigger buff is that the headshot damage increased from just 2.0 times to 2.5 times multiplier. And this was huge because even if you had a version of the Hunter Bolt that wasn't doing 100 damage to the body, you could still one-shot headshot because now it was 2.5 times instead of 2 times. I honestly don't know what it is about this sniper. It just feels so good to use. I don't know if it's the sound, the rechambering, the scope, everything just feels so great to use. And while the damage across the board isn't as good as something like the heavy sniper rifle or even just the regular bolt action sniper rifle, the advantage here is that you had 3 shots before you had to reload. So instead of scoping in, shooting, you had to reload, rechamber, do everything. Now you had 3 shots before you had to pull out of your scope and reload, and that is really, really good, especially in duos, squads. And I know I haven't been talking about zero build a lot, and that's just because I play build specifically, but in zero build playlists, rare and above, the Hunter Bolt Action can eliminate any enemy with 1 shot, 100 health, 100 shield, 50 overclock shield. It does not matter. Any rarity above rare can one-shot them. So yeah, this thing is an absolute zero build demon to say the least. But in my opinion, it just falls behind the number 1 best sniper in Fortnite history. That is the Reaper sniper rifle from Chapter 5. And pre-nerf, I would go as far as to say the pre-nerfed Reaper sniper is the best gun we've ever seen. Of course, the Reaper got substantially nerfed, and I'm just reading the patch notes right now. Bullet speed reduced by 8%, bullet drop increased by 40%. Then they nerfed it again, the bullet speed, the bullet drop by 116%. They reduced the spawn chance. This thing got absolutely nerfed into the ground. But I actually do believe, even with all those nerfs, I still think it's the best sniper ever. A headshot from any rarity of this weapon, doesn't matter, will deal 250 plus damage, instantly killing any enemy in zero build. And while yes, it does have a ton of bullet drop and is kind of harder to use now, I'm telling you one thing, there is no better sniper rifle in the game than a Reaper sniper rifle with a P2X optic and maybe chuck an extended mag or something like that. Any other attachment on it, honestly, you just gotta have that P2X optic. Please bring back P2X. Again, after its nerf, I still believe the Reaper sniper rifle is the best sniper in Fortnite history. Fortnite SMGs are often some of the best or some of the worst weapons in a Fortnite meta. We have seen some incredibly blatantly overpowered SMGs, and we've also seen some SMGs that should never ever be in the game again. And in this video, we are going to rank every single SMG in Fortnite history from worst to best. I should preface here at the beginning of the video, I will not be including the Chimera Raygun or Bender's Shiny Metal Raygun, as those aren't technically considered SMGs, they don't really have a weapon class, or the Drum Gun, because as much as you think it's an SMG, it's technically categorized as an AR. If you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to give me a like. These videos take a little bit to make. Use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop if you would like to support the videos that I make here on YouTube. And guys, let's just get right into this. At our number 20 spot, what I believe to be the worst SMG we've ever seen, that is the preseason submachine gun. And quickly, while I got you guys all here early, we are talking about the current state of the weapon, and that will be important once we get to certain weapons who have seen huge buffs or huge nerfs. But anyways, this SMG is the first SMG ever in Fortnite, the one when the game originally launched. You guys know which one I'm talking about. And honestly, not many people watching this video may have ever used this weapon, but you should be glad you didn't because it was atrocious. It had a very low magazine, was doing I think 11 damage with just insane bloom. I mean, the gameplay will speak for itself. I think it's the worst one ever. At our number 19 spot, that is the Charge SMG. And I'm telling you guys, I always have a cult fan club of people that love the Charge SMG in every one of my videos telling me how it's a top tier weapon, but I gotta be honest with you, I disagree with that. I think the charge mechanic works better on a shotgun because you only need to really hit that one big shot, right? But with a Charge SMG, you have to hit 10, 15 bullets to try and kill somebody, right? It just doesn't make sense to ever use this thing, especially when you charge it up, you have to shoot all the bullets at once. Like, that's terrible. Just trying to have to go out of your way to like pre-charge your SMG before you shoot somebody is a total disaster. What this SMG does have going for it is it's got a great fire rate, and if you do get it fully charged in a box with somebody, it's essentially like a minigun. You'll basically just mow them down. But by the time you've charged up already, they probably have shotgunned you in the face, so it's not worth using at all. At our number 18 spot, and I gotta be honest with you guys, this one surprised me a little bit. That's the Tactical Submachine Gun. Man, I mean, when I was doing research for this video, I didn't realize how bad the Tac Sub is. It's just not a good SMG. I think it used to be, but it got hit with some big time nerfs. I believe it was in Season X or maybe a little bit after that. Got hit with some big nerfs and made it basically unusable. Also, like on a totally unrelated note, why do they ever have to change the sound of this gun? This thing sounded so crispy. I remember being so excited for this thing when Starry Suburbs came out, of course, and they introduced the legendary Tac Sub. But wow, I mean, this gun has taken a complete fall off, and I mean, go look at the numbers for yourself. It's actually worse than the weapon that's going to be at the number 17 spot, which I couldn't even believe. And that weapon at the number 17 spot is the Makeshift Sub. Guys, it pains me to put any Chapter 2 Season 6 weapon not in last place, but the stats will tell you the Makeshift Sub is somehow better than the Tac. And you guys left me a bunch of comments on some videos saying, Ty, look at the stats for the Makeshift and the Tac. They have the exact same stats. If you can somehow believe it, the rare Makeshift SMG with a DPS of 190 is higher than the DPS of the Tactical Submachine Gun's legendary version at 189. While the Makeshift has a slower fire rate, it actually makes up for it in damage. Again, I can't really believe that I'm putting it this high on this list, honestly, but it kind of deserves it. Chapter 2 Season 6 lovers, go ahead and rejoice in the comment section, because it's the only time on one of my videos that you'll be able to do that. Anyways, moving up to the number 16 spot is the Machine SMG. And this weapon honestly goes totally forgotten about, mainly because of how good the Twin Mag SMG was. There is no universe in Chapter 4 where you would ever take the Machine SMG over the Twin Mag. The Twin Mag is one of the best, and we will see that same kind of thing happening with two other weapons on this list. And it's not just because the Twin Mag was that dominant. The Machine SMG was great, and that's mainly because of how big the bullet spread Red was or the Bloom. You basically had to use this thing at shotgun range, right? Anything past shotgun range, you're doing like 8 damage a bullet and the spread is just everywhere. It's insane. The advantage with this weapon is you get a high magazine size, so if you are in a box with somebody, you can basically just kind of outspray them, really. But it's going to take being better than just being good in a box fight to get higher on this list, if that makes any sense. And the machine SMG is really not good outside of a box fight. And in Chapter 4, like I said, it made no sense to take this over the Twin Mag SMG. Also, shout out to the OGs who remember in Season 9 when this thing was briefly added for like a day or something like that. At the number 15 spot is the Burst SMG, and not the Thunder Burst SMG, but the one that was added in Season X, I believe. Could be in Season 9, but you get what I'm saying. And this is another example of one of those weapons that people keep telling me the comment section was good, but guys, take off the rose-tinted glasses, this thing was kind of mid. And it might honestly just be because we have seen such a better version of the Burst SMG that this one just totally falls behind. But low damage, bad recoil, the gameplay honestly should speak for itself. I remember watching a laser beam video with this weapon and he was like actually raging. He could not get a kill with this gun. Season X especially was so hectic that there was really no space in your inventory to take a Burst SMG. And yeah, so this weapon wasn't really for me, but I could see it being a little bit higher on this list, maybe 2 or 3 spots, but nothing really higher than that, let's be honest. At the number 14 spot is an OG weapon, that is the suppressed submachine gun. And there definitely was a time in Fortnite history when this was the best weapon in the entire game. People were taking it over scars. I vividly remember it. You either remember it or you don't. But guys, we are far removed from the suppressed SMG being a dominant weapon in Fortnite, and at this point, it just stays on the sidelines. It's a neat weapon, I guess, and the one thing that it has going for it is it's extremely accurate. You guys know when you shoot this weapon, the first shot accuracy resets almost instantly, and I guess that's okay for like those close to mid-range gunfights, but I don't know, this weapon just doesn't really do it for me. I also just think having a suppressor on a submachine gun doesn't really do anything because, as we all know, we mostly use submachine guns right after we shoot the shotgun shot, right? We shoot the shotgun, then follow it up with the SMG. So at that point, your cover is already really blown when you shoot the shotgun, right? So what does having a suppressor on the SMG really do? It makes sense to have it on like an assault rifle or a sniper, but an SMG, not really. And I think that's why it's the only one we've ever seen with a built-in suppressor like this. I don't know. To me, this SMG doesn't feel great, but it's also not horrible, so don't get that mixed up. It's definitely not terrible, but really not great at all. At the number 13 spot on this list is the Scoped Burst. And I don't really know about this one. I mean, was anybody really hoping and begging for a scoped SMG? Like, I don't think so. I definitely wasn't. I understand that to me, this weapon kind of played like a hybrid AR SMG. Like, that's the whole point of putting a scope on a SMG, especially a zoomed in scope like that. But it didn't really do it for me. Again, I'm the type of player that likes to use SMGs at close range and pretty exclusively close range. So a scoped SMG did not move the needle for me at all. What I will say is this is a prime example of a weapon that in the right hands can be absolutely dominant. If you are accurate and you hit those 2-3 bullets in that burst, you could be doing some serious damage. And I have seen multiple clips from Chapter 4 Season 4 of people getting killed at AR distances with the scoped burst SMG. It's just personally not for me and not a weapon that I seeked out during that season very often. And since it's my list, yeah, this is where it's going to be. At the number 12 spot on this list, and you Chapter 2 Season 6 lovers are having a field day with this video, that's the Primal SMG. In my other videos, I do rip on Chapter 2 Season 6 weapons and how bad all the weapons are, but the one thing about this season that was good was the Primal SMG. It was actually probably the best out of the Primal and makeshift weapons that entire season. This is just a really solid SMG. I mean, a DPS of 220 at the legendary version is absolutely going to get it done. 35 bullets in a magazine, headshot damage ranging from 52 to 61 with 22 damage a shot. I mean, that's going to get it done. Granted, it was pretty inaccurate, and of course, that's the case with all the Primal and makeshift weapons, really, but man, also, this weapon sounded sick. I always rip into Chapter 2 Season 6, but I can give this season credit when it deserves it, and it definitely deserves it for the Primal SMG. At the number 11 spot, and I think probably the first kind of out there take of this video, that's the Hyper SMG. And I'll be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised I put it this high. I really did not like this weapon. And again, as I previously mentioned with the Machine SMG being totally outclassed and overshadowed by the Twin Mag SMG, this is the same case here with the Hyper SMG SMG and the Thunder Burst SMG. This is just one of those examples from Chapter 5 Season 1 where it's like, why would you ever take the Hyper? Everyone knows the Thunder Burst was better. That was a known thing. All the pros were using the Thunder Burst. There was absolutely no reason to take the Hyper. I think in a better season, this weapon would have fared a lot better because it's really not terrible. I mean, I still feel like it is a usable weapon, but especially in a season with a dominant other SMG and a dominant shotgun, especially a fully auto shotgun at that, the Hyper for me became kind of useless in Chapter 5 Season 1. And kind of similarly to that, in Chapter 5 Season 2, we got the Harbinger SMG, and that's going to be my number 10 spot. And again, as I just mentioned with the Hyper, right, and being in a fully auto shotgun meta, the Gatekeeper shotgun and the Harbinger SMG are basically the same thing. While I think the Harbinger gets a little bit more use because the Gatekeeper in most cases only has 3 bullets in a mag, so you kind of had to carry an SMG. The problem with this weapon was really the recoil, and as you guys know, with the Harbinger, the longer you held down the trigger, the more recoil you would get. So if you're able to kind of fire it in like 5, 6, 7 round bursts, you'd be able to do some pretty good damage and have pretty good accuracy. But if you were going to try and full auto this thing at somewhat mid ranges, good luck hitting a shot. It's going to be crazy. I don't know, like this weapon is at the 50% mark in this list, and that's because I think it's extremely mid, right? It's really not great and it's really not terrible. It's just a very average submachine gun. And at our number 9 spot on this list, a weapon with a ton of history, that's the Stinger SMG. And man, this weapon is another weapon that was up there for one of the best weapons of its time when it got launched. The Stinger was so strong. Then they actually nerfed it by decreasing the damage in each rarity by 2. So it started out doing 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 24 damage, down to 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22 in those respective rarities. And if that wasn't enough, they then nerfed it again by decreasing the damage by 1 damage now. So it went from 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 22 to 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Just a massive nerf. And then they also reduced the damage to structures by 5, which is one of the things that made this weapon stand out in comparison to the other SMGs, especially. It had really good damage to structures. Even with all its nerfs, I do actually feel like it is still a decent SMG and definitely the best up to this point. It's just a shame what they did to my boy, man. They absolutely nerfed this thing into the ground. 228 DPS from the legendary version is still pretty decent though. At the number 8 spot is just the base submachine gun, but the one that was introduced in Season 5. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, the P90 will be on a different spot on this list and will not be included in this specific ranking. This is another example of an SMG that was extremely strong when it launched, but has been nerfed since and is now a probably above average SMG, I would say. It's just your basic submachine gun. It's pretty good. It has a good fire rate, good damage, decent accuracy, like you would expect with a submachine gun. And it's just kind of your solid do-it-all weapon. If you want a weapon that's not too crazy, not too fast fire rate, but also gives you good damage in return, this is a good weapon to pick. It's decently versatile and can get the job done in most situations, and for that gets its spot within the top 10 on this list. At the number 7 spot here though is the rapid fire SMG. And I think some people are going to argue that this should be higher on this list, maybe even within the top 5, especially Cypher PK, man. That guy loved this weapon. But man, this gun is such a hit or miss weapon. Of course, as the name suggests, it has an incredible fire rate. I believe the best fire rate other than the Charge SMG in its class. And that is a really good thing, but really only when you're in someone's box. You're just going to absolutely melt them, especially if you get a big shotgun shot for 100 plus. You pull out the rapid fire, they're going to get melted. But similar to the machine SMG mentioned earlier in this video, this thing is going to absolutely struggle outside of those extreme close quarter engagements. So you basically trade off the really good accuracy of a weapon like, let's say, the suppressed SMG or the twin mag SMG for an extreme fire rate and lower damage. So this is one of those weapons that's like kind of pick your poison, right? Another weapon that in the right hands can be absolutely dominant and used in the right situations can be really good and oftentimes outgun a shotgun, pending that you don't miss your shots, because of course it fires so fast that it's easy to get caught up and miss 10-15 shots and then you're kind of screwed. With that being said though, this is an SMG that has a lot of potential in the right hands and can be really good. At the number 6 spot is the P90 or the compact SMG. And interestingly enough, I actually believe in creative they have different weapon types between the P90 and the compact SMG. And as you've seen with several weapons already on this video, some SMGs have the tendency to release in absolutely broken states, and the P90 is no exception to that rule. This thing launched absolutely busted out of its mind. If you guys have seen one of the first videos I made on this channel revisiting some of the most overpowered weapons, I believe the P90 is in that list. But they absolutely had to nerf it, and nerf it they did. They nerfed the accuracy bonus. They reduced it from 35 to 15%. They also reduced the damage from 23 and 24 to 21 and 22, of course, in purple and legendary rarities. They also reduced the fire rate from 11 to 10. They reduced the ranges, fall off percentages. I mean, they crushed this thing. If you'll also remember, this weapon also launched with a magazine size of 50, if you can believe it, and then they nerfed it down to 40, then also reduced the damage again from 21, 22 to 20 and 21. And I believe after that, those stats are how the weapon currently stands. And while yes, it used to be a lot better, it is still a very viable option. The bloom does kind of suck on this thing, and the range is really not there, but honestly, in a range where you're supposed to use an SMG, this thing is going to shred. And at the number 5 spot, cracking the top 5, is the exotic version of the compact, or P90. That's the heisted run and gun SMG, part of the heisted event, of course. And this thing is basically just a beefed up version of what the P90 is, which is why it gets 1 spot higher on the list. While it does have really kind of a weak DPS and a lower damage than the regular P90, it makes up for it with the special abilities that you gain while using this weapon. And those abilities are that just holding the weapon will give the player the slap effect and will also reload the weapon while sprinting. So great mobility, and also you don't have to worry about reloading the weapon as it will just auto reload it for you. I believe it reloaded 1 bullet at a time and 2 bullets a second. This is an extremely viable SMG and a creative twist on the P90, and I believe it deserves to be just 1 spot ahead of the P90. At our number 4 spot is the Combat SMG, and I may be a little biased here because this is one of my favorite weapons of all time, and man, was this another example of a weapon that was absolutely busted for a time. And let me tell you something, 264 DPS is absolutely going to get the job done. It's got great damage, great fire rate, and a great magazine size. The problem here is just that recoil. This weapon has an absurd amount of recoil, and guys, if you're playing on control, you literally just have to yank that right stick all the way down when you are shooting this weapon. The good thing is the majority of it is vertical recoil, so you don't have to worry about managing horizontal recoil, which is just a total disaster. But I mean, just listen to the history of this weapon. It launched in such a broken state that they had to reduce the damage to players and structures by 2. So originally it was doing 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and then after that nerf it was doing 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 damage, of course in its respective categories. But arguably a bigger nerf was they took down the headshot multiplier from 2 times to 1.75 times, so you were doing less damage on a headshot. They then nerfed the damage by 1 across all rarities again, and 3 from the Mythic. So the Mythic launched doing 25 damage, but quickly was nerfed down to doing 22 damage. It then got buffed back to where it previously was at 1 damage higher, and that's how it currently stands. Even with all these nerfs, I do think it is still a top tier SMG, especially in the right hands with somebody who can control that recoil. At our number 3 spot, and it was honestly hard for me to rank these top 3, but that's going to be the Twin Mag SMG. For the longest time, I really thought that this was the best SMG of all time, and for a little bit it was. Just an incredibly accurate weapon. I mean, this is essentially just a hybrid between an AR and SMG. Really good damage, essentially like very minimal bloom, and you also got the faster reload after each other reload, if that makes sense. This was the absolute dominant SMG of Chapter 4, and there's no surprise that it should be up this high on the list. I know some players were not a fan of this weapon, but the Thunder Shotgun plus Twin Mag SMG is absolutely one of my favorite metas of all time, and the Twin Mag SMG was a special weapon. This is such a good SMG, and any weapon that is the best in its category for an entire chapter obviously has to be high up on the list. And just double up on every single thing I said for the heisted Blink Mag SMG, which is our number 2 weapon. It just does everything the regular Twin Mag SMG does, but gives you incredible mobility in that like rift dash effect. For any of you guys who are unfamiliar, or maybe new players especially to Chapter 5, if you guys remember Chapter 5 Season 2, you had those green skulls that let you dash right from right, left, back, forward, however you wanted to move. It was basically that exact same thing, but just every time you reload the weapon, or I think it was every other reload, I forget. Regardless, being able to have such good mobility, right, at any time. It doesn't matter if you're actually using the weapon, right? Let's just say you're getting destroyed and you need to get out of a fight. Just shoot the SMG 1 time, reload it, and there's your quick mobility boost. You didn't have to have mobility when you had the this weapon because you had mobility and a weapon in just one slot. And it's not like the actual weapon itself was bad. It was really good. I mean, the twin mag, as I just said, I just rambled on about it for about a minute or so. So yeah, this SMG honestly does everything right, and it was really hard to not put it at the number 1 spot. But all you Chapter 5 players, rejoice in the comments below. I think everybody knew it was going to be the number 1 spot on this list. That is the Thunderburst SMG. I mean, what do I have to say about this weapon? All the pros use it for a reason. It has been the dominant SMG of Chapter 5. Honestly, potentially the dominant weapon of this entire chapter. When you get those good attachments on this weapon, especially the laser sight, I believe it is, which gives you that infinite first shot accuracy, basically making the weapon have 0 bloom. I mean, it is just such a strong submachine gun. I think people expected it to be at least in the top 3, but I thought honestly when making this list, it was a no doubt this was the best of all time. It just has really good damage, of course, great accuracy. Even when you don't get that attachment, you're still getting really good accuracy. There's a very short delay between the bursts. You will often see players, especially in Chapter 5 Season 1, using this as their assault rifle, and for a good reason. I believe it's the best submachine gun of all time. In this video, I'm going to take on the seemingly impossible task of ranking every single shotgun in Fortnite history from worst to best. And I am simply ranking them by which one I would rather use. So in this video, I would rather use the 15th best shotgun rather than the 16th best shotgun. It's that simple. No need to overcomplicate things. We're keeping it simple here. Exotic shotguns will be counted on this list, and the mythic versions of the shotguns will count towards their base counterparts. So like Kit's mythic charged shotgun, that's just going to count for the charged shotgun spot. This video took me absolute eons to make, so if you go on to enjoy it, be sure to leave it a like and use code TYFRYZ to continue to support my channel here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, let's just get right into it. But first, a word from the sponsor of today's video, Moono, the world's best-selling internet microphone. Moono's PD100X microphone is one of the most versatile microphones on the market, and for the price of literally 2 legendary skins in Fortnite, you can't go wrong. The PD100X offers an impressive frequency response of 40 Hz to 16 kHz and a 24-bit 48 kHz sampling rate, which is essential for clear audio. Its custom cardioid capsule allows for voice isolation from background noise, and through its USB XLR connectivity, the PD100X provides dual connectivity options. It also pairs perfectly with the Moono Link software, which provides an intuitive interface for users. The PD100X also features a soft touch mute key, so you can easily mute yourself with just a single press. As well as this, the PD100X boasts customizable RGB lighting with 3 modes and 19 color options. Moono also sent me their G1 Neo sound card, which seamlessly connects with their PD100X microphone for the ideal gaming or live streaming setup. The G1 Neo connects with the PD100X through an XLR cable as well as a 3.5mm gaming headset. It offers a 48V button for a condenser microphone, but I personally would suggest just testing the sound first in the original mode. Just like the PD100X mic, RGB lighting is prevalent, and there are 3 lighting modes, and so if it's not for you, the lighting can be turned off with just 1 press. If you're more of a streamer, the G1 Neo offers a Bluetooth button that can connect to your phone, computer, etc. to play background music for your stream. The sidechain button provides clear human voice under your background music, and my personal favorite feature is the voice changer button, which offers 4 different voice changers.
Of course, I will absolutely be trolling my boys with this one.
The G1 Neo works with smartphones, computers, tablets, and softwares like OBS, Discord, Twitch, YouTube, and more, and both the PD100X and G1 Neo are incredibly convenient and easy to use, especially for gamers and beginners in live streaming. All links will be in the description, and thanks again to Moono for sponsoring today's content. So at the number 30 spot, the worst shotgun in Fortnite history, it's the makeshift shotgun. Look, man, I don't know. The 2 shots in a clip is just not getting it done for me. Very low damage. Again, like I just said, you can only shoot 2 times before you had to reload. And let's be honest with you, nobody was using this thing. Everybody was just getting it so that they could upgrade to a regular pump shotgun. Put this shotgun in basically any season of Fortnite history, it will automatically be the worst shotgun in that season. And yeah, it's the worst of all time. At the number 29 spot is the Dub. I mean, people love this shotgun, but guys, it's literally a shotgun that pushes you away from your target. This is a uber close quarters weapon. I mean, you are only going to use this when you are inside of somebody's box, like that close to somebody. So why would you ever want a shotgun that is just going to push you away from the people? I don't understand it. I mean, I guess it could be used for mobility, and the damage is all right if you are right in front of someone's face. I just don't see the use of this shotgun. I genuinely think every other shotgun in the game's history is better than it except for the makeshift shift. At the number 28 spot is the Primal Shotgun. And this is an interesting one because there was a point in time when this, was probably one of the best shotguns in Fortnite history, but that's not the case anymore. I don't understand why they love 2-round burst shotguns. Those have no point in a game like Fortnite. It just doesn't work, and it did not work here. Again, like I said, on launch, absolutely busted, broken, probably the best shotgun of all time on launch. But man, that nerf absolutely destroyed this thing. I think the gameplay will show for itself. You can hit for like literally 4 damage with this thing. It's pretty bad. In the current state it is in right now, it is a poor shotgun. At the number 27 spot is the Wood Stake Shotgun, and this is kind of a confusing one. If you didn't know this existed, I wouldn't blame you. It was really barely in the game. It is essentially just a reskinned version of the new version of the heavy shotgun. The Wood Stake shoots a slug pellet, right? So it's not like 8 or 9 pellets that come out like a normal shotgun. It is just one big slug shell. And you will see in this video that I'm not a fan of those big risky slug shotguns. I don't really like it. They're fun to use, but I don't think they're practical in a game like Fortnite. And since I just said that, that shouldn't surprise you that at the number 26 spot is the new version of the heavy shotgun. Again, the one that shoots slugs. While I will say that this gun is absolutely not for me, I can absolutely see why you would love this weapon. It is really fun and feels incredibly satisfying to use, and you can do like triple digit plus damage at incredible ranges. It just basically makes it so that you have to aim down sights. If you're going to hip fire, good luck trying to hit anything like inside of a box when you're hip firing. It's just not going to happen. And I don't really want to use my shotgun at mid to long range anyways. I carry a shotgun to use it in a box in a close quarters fight, and that's why I don't like these slug long range type shotguns. At the number 25 spot is the 2-shot shotgun, and this thing's really bad. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, the prime shotgun just totally overpowered this thing, and I don't think that anybody would ever take the 2-shot shotgun when you literally had the prime shotgun sitting right there. I'm not saying the prime shotgun is like goated, the best shotgun of all time, but it is miles better than this thing. 2-round burst shotgun. I mean, what are we doing? I guess if you are close proximity and you are able to hit both back to back, you can do some good work. But again, just a gimmicky shotgun, that's not for me. At the number 24 spot is the Sharp 2 shotgun. And this shotgun absolutely takes the cake for being the most unoriginal weapon in Fortnite history. I can't believe they like literally trolled us. They brought back the most infamous weapon in Fortnite history, but said, you know what? No, you don't get that. You can take the same weapon model, but you don't get the OG pump back. Instead, you get this like weird rip-off long range shotgun. And again, everybody knows that shotguns are supposed to be close quarters weapons, or at least in Fortnite they are. So like, I don't know why they kept pushing out this agenda of trying to get people to use long range shotguns. It just doesn't work. At least for me, it doesn't. I will say, like, in endgame, a shotgun like this can be really good, especially when you're sitting on height and shooting down on everybody. But again, long range shotgun just doesn't do it for me. I don't like it. I would much rather use just a regular pump shotgun or like a Maven or something at close range. And yeah, that's why it gets its spot here at the bottom of the list. At the number 23 spot is just the regular double barrel shotgun. And I can see some people in the comment sections already complaining about this. The double barrel has a crazy following. People love this weapon, and I can understand why. It can be really satisfying to just go boom, boom, and just destroy somebody in their box. But I don't know. I think it's a high risk, high reward weapon. If you miss even one of those shots, you're going to be in big trouble. A weapon like this basically forces you to carry a secondary weapon like an SMG or an AR. And again, I don't really like the fact that it is super high risk, high reward. Yes, if you are in somebody's box and you hit both shots, you are probably going to kill them instantly. But in any other situation other than that, if you are past like 5 or 10 meters, you're not going to kill them. And yes, while I don't like the long range shotguns that trade damage but for range, I still think it is good for a shotgun to have very solid range and do solid damage. And while the double barrel does do extremely solid damage, just only within a box, it doesn't have great range at all. But anyways, at the number 22 spot is the Dragon's Breath shotgun, and again, a very, very gimmicky shotgun. And look, it's pretty simple. You had one shot. You either hit them with all 4 of those pellets and you kill them and they burn to death, or you do like 70 or 80 damage and you're in big trouble. You gotta pull out an SMG or an AR. It's very similar to the double barrel. High risk, high reward. At close range in their box, you're going to destroy somebody. Other than that, you're gonna be in big trouble and you shouldn't use it. People absolutely love this shotgun, but I don't know, just not for me. At the number 21 spot is the heavy shotgun, the old version, the original heavy shotgun from season 4, I think it was added in. Actually, it might have been season 3, honestly, at this point. It was like 6 years ago, so don't blame me. And as you can see, I've really emphasized those like long range shotguns and how much I don't like them, but that trend was set by this heavy shotgun. And I don't know, to me, this shotgun feels extremely mid. I could never get around to liking this shotgun. I know, again, just like the double barrel, there's like a cult following for this weapon. And yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say, really. I'm just not a fan of it. I just felt like, in my opinion, I would rather have a tack or a pump over this thing. And if you like this weapon, then yeah, that's fine for you, but it's my list, so it's gonna stay here. At the number 20 spot is the Evo Chrome shotgun, and this is an interesting one. Again, this is another example of a very gimmicky shotgun. Again, like, I feel like there's no in-between with this weapon. It's either you love it or you really hate it. And I've mentioned before in previous videos, I really love the Evo Chrome damage thing. Like, the more damage you would do, the more you would upgrade the weapon. I mean, people just ended up exploiting that, just doing damage to NPCs and animals, which would count towards your damage marker. But regardless, I mean, if you are right in front of somebody, like, put that gun down their throat, this thing will destroy them in about 2 or 3 shots. Other than that, you're gonna be in trouble. It's not great, but it's not terrible, I guess. At the number 19 spot is the drum shotgun. And if my memory serves me correct, this was the first fully automatic shotgun in Fortnite history. Unfortunately, it set the precedent for many more to come. And I honestly felt like this thing was pretty weak in chapter 1 when it first came out, but this thing absolutely thrived in no build. Again, I am a builds player if you don't already know that, so I guess just keep that in the back of your mind when you're listening to these rankings. But yeah, again, in chapter 3, chapter 4, this thing absolutely thrived in zero build. I mean, that mythic version is actually unreal, one of the best shotguns of all time. But yeah, as you can imagine, as a build player, I would almost always take another shotgun over the drum. At the number 18 spot is another incredibly forgettable weapon. That's the Infiltrator Pump Shotgun from chapter 4, season 4, I think. This shotgun was only in the game for that season and has never been seen since, and honestly, I hope it doesn't come back. It had a faster fire rate than like your typical pump shotgun. It was trying to be like that hybrid again between the tack and pump shotgun, which we will see further up on this list. But the damage just didn't back up the fire rate. But the damage just wasn't there for me. It was trying to be a pump shotgun, but with like a tack shotgun damage. And my biggest gripe with this weapon, it just felt inconsistent. I can't stand these inconsistent shotguns. In the right hands, like, I remember watching Zemi and Ninja play with this thing, and they were absolutely destroying. But I mean, let's be honest, they're just going to destroy with every weapon they get. At the number 17 spot, and I believe this is going to be a little bit of a hot take, that's the combat shotgun. And besides like the pump or tack shotgun, this might be the most featured weapon in Fortnite history. I mean, it has been in so many seasons. I think it's been in every single chapter. And I honestly just feel like it gets worse and worse since its absolute crazy buffed version in chapter 1. Although, I mean, I think it's okay in the current state of the game. It's not terrible. This weapon has a crazy history, honestly. It came out, and I don't know if you remember, but like in that first couple hours of, I believe it was season 9, this shotgun was really, really bad, like awful. And then they went overboard and buffed it way too much, and this thing was broken for like a week. The combat shotgun broken meta in chapter 9 when that season first launched is insane. This thing was one of the best weapons we had ever seen. And honestly, I think that was the high point for this weapon, because in every chapter since then, I feel like it just gets worse and worse, and to me just kind of feels like a throw-in weapon. Like they just need, okay guys, we just need to put another shotgun in the meta, let's just chuck in the combat shotgun in there. At the number 16 spot is the Ranger shotgun, and honestly, I'm surprised such a high-risk shotgun is up this far on the list. You guys know I don't like those. And wow, I mean, what a crazy shotgun. It's not like anything we have really ever seen before. You get one shot and you have an incredibly tight pellet spread, like as tight as you can get basically without being like the new heavy shotgun model, which allows for great damage since you have such a tight pellet spread at close range when you're in the box with somebody or at long range, which is a reason why I like it more than those slug type shotguns. And from my knowledge of this shotgun, this thing is an absolute zero build demon. Shoot somebody, hit them for 150, and then just go straight to the SMG swap. Again, in build, not crazy ideal, right? You probably take a pump or attack over it, but in zero build, I know that this thing was really good, and that's really what pushes it this far on the list. This weapon in the hands of a player who is good with it is absolutely unstoppable. It's insane. I remember getting stomped by this gun. At the number 15 spot, yeah, you guys knew another hot take was coming in here. It's the lever action shotgun. And I swear to you, honestly, Nick A30 is the only person that likes this shotgun. It just feels very inconsistent. Again, I mentioned we would be talking about some weapons that were like trying to be hybrids between the pump and the tack shotgun, and that's exactly what this is. The main advantage that the lever has going for it is an incredible fire rate and a really great pullout time. And it's also got a pretty sick animation when you're like doing the kind of rechambering between between shots. But man, this thing is so inconsistent. Might be the most inconsistent shotgun of all time. When this thing came back in chapter 3, it was an absolute travesty and a total disaster in my opinion. And it is smack dab in the middle of this list. It's a 30 gun list. It is at number 15. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's extremely mid. At the number 14 spot is the prime shotgun. And to me, this is a prime example, no pun intended, of what a good gimmicky weapon looks like. The way this weapon would work is essentially that first shot in the clip would do a significant amount more damage than the rest of the shots. So you would shoot that first shot, it would do a big time shot, and then the other 3 or 4 shells would do very little damage, or at least in comparison to that first shot. And so this meant, yeah, you were extremely rewarded for knowing how to use this weapon the correct way. If you went into it just treating it like any other shotgun, you're going to get very minimal bad results. But if you go into it knowing you should shoot a shot, peek around the corner, come back, reload the shell, and then hit them again for a big time shot, you're going to do well. It's actually one of my favorite shotguns of all time, so it hurts to kind of put it down here. I would have liked it to be in the top 10, but we just have some better shotguns ahead of it. At the number 13 spot is the auto shotgun from chapter 3. And yeah, wow, this is another just really forgotten about shotgun. I honestly kind of forgot it existed. And to my knowledge, this thing actually has the same exact fire rate as the TAC shotgun, so it's literally a reskin of the TAC. It's a decent weapon, right? I mean, I feel like the balance with shotguns in chapter 3 was pretty good. I will say I do think the striker pump was better, but the auto was very serviceable. It was decent. It's nothing crazy out of this world, and it's not terrible. It's going to get the job done, and for that reason, it gets its spot pretty decently high on this list. At the number 12 spot is the hammer pump, and honestly, I can't believe I'm putting it this high because I absolutely despise this weapon. And honestly, I know a lot of you guys too. This weapon is really unpopular with the community in chapter 5. And honestly, it's not really this weapon's fault. I mean, if you look at the damage on this weapon compared to the regular pump shotgun, yes, the base body shot damage is considerably less, but the headshot damage is actually, I believe, 1 less or maybe 1 more. So if you're able to consistently hit your headshots, you're going to get really good results from using this thing. But look, it's pretty simple. I just feel like the hammer pump has been outclassed in every season it's been in. In chapter 5, season 1 specifically, the frenzy auto shotgun was the go-to that whole season. I feel like that's kind of obvious. In chapter 5, season 2, we got the gatekeeper shotgun. I mean, no questions about that there. One of the best shotguns of all time, to be honest with you. So the hammer pump didn't really stand a chance. Again, it's not necessarily this shotgun's fault, but it really doesn't have a great reception from the community. At the number 11 spot is the Maven auto shotgun from chapter 4. And again, similar to the hammer pump shotgun, this weapon was just outclassed in chapter 4 by the thunder shotgun. That thing was incredible. But still, the Maven is actually really good. I was not a fan of it when it came out. Again, like I just said, I would always use the thunder over it, but looking back on some gameplay and some statistics on this thing, it was actually really decent. I don't know, like this is one of those weapons that for me felt like it was absolutely awful, but then watching other people use it, it was incredible. So I don't know. I mean, comment skill issue, I guess. And yeah, while I do think that this thing was absolutely outclassed by the thunder shotgun, I will acknowledge that the Maven is a pretty good shotgun, especially in that legendary version. That legendary was something special. That thing was consistently hitting for over 100. At the number 10 spot is the striker pump shotgun from chapter 3. And yeah, again, just another reskinned pump, but I'm not complaining. And this shotgun is really interesting for one main reason that threw a lot of players off. It actually has a slower fire rate than the regular pump shotgun by I think half a second. So it created like a ton of like really weird timings using this thing. So you would think that you would actually be able to shoot, but in reality you couldn't. This weapon had an incredible pullout time though. It pulled out really fast and a very small pellet spread, so you were going to do good damage when you hit those pellets. I actually really do like the striker. I think we have seen better pumps, but I mean look, it's in the top 10 of Fortnite's best shotguns, so it's got to be pretty decent, right? At the number 9 spot is the TAC shotgun, and boy, I have a feeling I am about to ruffle some feathers in the comment section. This is one of Fortnite's first shotguns ever. Everybody knows the TAC shotgun. Everybody loves, or I guess kind of hates the TAC shotgun, depending on who you ask. If it's the gray TAC shotgun, yeah, you can throw me into that list of hates it. That gray TAC shotgun is an absolute nightmare. It absolutely lives in my head forever. I hate the gray TAC. It was honestly like a meme in the community. Like everybody knew how bad the gray TAC was. But again, like everybody knows what the TAC shotgun is good for. It is your semi-auto shotgun. If you don't want to use a pump shotgun where you have to wait between shots, just use that TAC shotgun. You'll shoot a lot faster at the trade-off of lower damage. And honestly, one of the things that pushes it so high up on the list is that purple and legendary shotgun. That thing is absolutely busted. It is so strong. I think it does 75 structure damage. So what a lot of players would do is honestly, they would just get the wall down with their pickaxe down to 75 and then just shoot the wall and jump in the box at the same time. You didn't stand a chance against it. I can't emphasize it enough, honestly, the purple and legendary version of the tac shotgun are so good, especially if you can remember the OG purple tac shotgun from the early seasons of Fortnite. Rest in peace to that version. But guys, I do think there are 8 better shotguns ahead of it. And at that number 8 spot is the Heisted Breacher shotgun, the second of 3 exotic shotguns on this list. And yes, while I did say before I am not a fan of those slug shotguns, this is an exception. And yeah, if you don't know, this is basically just the new version of the heavy shotgun, but just the fact that it one-shots every single type of wall. I mean, how insane is that? This thing is an absolute nightmare material. I can't explain that enough. Anybody can get into your box at any time whenever they wanted. That's insane. Not to mention that if somebody had good aim, you could casually just get like picked out of the air for 180 damage. Like, what a crazy weapon. This is an extremely high skill weapon, which I don't think a lot of players like about it. It's hard to use, but this thing absolutely ran the game when it was in it. I mean, and rightfully so. It's insanely strong. At the number 7 spot is the Frenzy Auto shotgun. Again, there was a time in Fortnite history when this was the best shotgun of all time. No questions asked. I would tell you at the beginning of chapter 5 season 1, it was insane, especially Oscars. I mean, that thing is just insane, unfathomably good. But of course, we have seen it come down to earth. It's been nerfed a bunch of times, and now it just feels like your standard run-of-the-mill auto shotgun. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it is still very good, right? And that's why it's on this list, because of course we are talking about the weapons in their current version. And the way I gotta look at it, guys, is like, would I rather have at the number 9 spot the tac shotgun, at the number 8 spot the Heisted Breacher, or the Frenzy Auto? I would rather have the Frenzy Auto over those 2 shotguns. And as typical for like these auto shotguns, the damage is very inconsistent and the range is quite poor, but overall I do think it is a really good shotgun. At the number 6 spot is the Charged Shotgun, and what a crazy shotgun. And I'll be honest with you, if you told my chapter 2 season 3 self that I was putting the Charged Shotgun as the 6th best Fortnite shotgun of all time, I would call you absolutely delusional. And honestly, that's how most of the community felt when this weapon was added, and that's just because it's so unique. It has that crazy quirk where you have to charge up the entire shot. I mean, that was never even heard of. And players did not like the Charged Shotgun. Like, let it be known, people did not like this weapon. But I think as people have sat on it and used it in different versions of the game and different seasons and in creative, I think people start to like it a lot more, including myself. Like, I used to be a Charged Shotgun hater. I didn't like the charge mechanic, but after you get used to it, it is a really good shotgun. The damage is absolutely incredible when you're fully charged up. The problem is just absolutely using it the right way. There's a huge skill gap here. At the number 5 spot is the Heisted Accelerant Maven. And honestly, really any of these top 5 shotguns, you could make an argument that they should be the best, and this one is no exception. This thing's incredible. The fire rate would literally speed up every single time you did damage to somebody with this thing. So if you did 2, 3, 4 in a row, you were basically shooting a fully auto shotgun at that point, with, mind you, damage from a semi-auto. Your actual movement speed would also speed up as well as the fire rate of the weapon. So I mean, super versatile here. What other shotgun is doing this for you? This thing absolutely dominates like a 0 build mode, where you are able to fire off like 2, 3, 4 shotgun shots in a row without having to worry about people building. And yeah, this weapon's absolutely incredible. Again, these top 5 you could argue should all be number 1. At the number 4 spot is the Thunder Shotgun. And wow, boy, do I miss this shotgun. I mean, this weapon, if I remember correctly, was introduced in chapter 4 season 1 and has never been seen again since. It's just remained in the vault. And what a weird weapon. It had like 2 barrels at the front. It wasn't a double barrel shotgun, but it had the 2 barrels at the front, and the reticle, right, like your hip fire spread was more horizontal, almost like the Evo Chrome, instead of vertical or like a regular circle. All right, let me tell you one thing. This thing did insane damage and also sounded so cool. I love the sound of this weapon. The main disadvantage is that you actually shot 2 shells every time you pressed the trigger, and the reload was painfully slow. With that being said, though, what I will tell you is the damage absolutely makes up for all those flaws. It's an incredible weapon. Bring it back, please. At the number 3 spot is the Gatekeeper Shotgun, and I'm telling you guys, I've said so many times here, these could all be in the number 1 spot. They're absolutely all unreal weapons. And what a crazy weapon. I mean, again, another one of those hybrids between a pump and a tac shotgun, but this thing does it the best. I think people will make the argument against the Gatekeeper that, oh, well, it only has 3 shells in the clip, which is annoying having to constantly reload that all the time. And I absolutely understand that argument, don't get me wrong, but being able to fire off 3 bullets that fast and them all be doing basically pump shotgun damage is basically really unheard of. If you get into somebody's box with a full mag, it is almost like impossible to not kill them when you have those 3 shots. And put on a drum mag, get 5, you're absolutely golden. This thing is unstoppable, and honestly, the reload is not bad at all. I mean, obviously, you're going to have to reload a lot, but I don't think a lot of people are going to disagree with me in the comments. I do think it is a top 3 shotgun of all time. All right, we've finally gotten into the 2 best shotguns of all time, and you guys know what 2 they are, but in what order, right? At the number 2 spot is going to be the OG pump shotgun, just the regular pump shotgun. It actually has been dethroned, in my opinion, from the number 1 spot, and that is absolutely to no fault of its own. The pump shotgun is the weapon that basically made Fortnite. I mean, when you think about Fortnite, you think about the pump shotgun, right? It used to be like an absolute sniper, and then this thing was doing like 250 damage in the common version, the early states of Fortnite. Then it was like tuned, and we got the spaz shotgun, which is like the main shotgun used in all creative maps. It's just an absolutely incredible weapon. I don't need to explain it anymore. Everybody who is watching this video has used this shotgun and knows how good it is. You might disagree on the placement, but honestly, it can't be any lower than the number 5 spot. It should be in the top 5. And yeah, I'm waiting for the comments of people to say I'm absolutely glazing the pump shotgun, and yeah, I am. I mean, I know I sound like a fanboy here, but it's incredible. But at the number 1 spot, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's the Havoc pump shotgun from Chapter 4 Season 2. Dude, like, this thing is absolutely unreal. I can't believe this was actually in the game. What makes it really stand out from the regular pump shotgun or other pumps on this list is how tight the pellet spread is. I mean, remember the Ranger shotgun from before? You basically get almost a pellet spread like that, but with pump shotgun damage. Like, this thing was literally free 200 pumps, great fire rate, the weapon sounded amazing, it did unbelievable damage. I mean, really, what else is there to say? I know I'm saying like the same thing over and over again, but what is there to say about it? It just, to me, felt like a guaranteed low 100 damage shot every single time you took it. It was the dominant, absolute best shotgun in Chapter 4 Season 2, and I'll be honest with you, I think it's the best shotgun of all time. All right, guys, this is a video that I have been working on for weeks and weeks at a time. It is probably the most highly anticipated video on my channel. Of course, we are going to rank every single assault rifle in Fortnite history from worst to best. I'm just going to note here in the beginning, yeah, I am in a college room. I did just move in. So if you hear any ambiance, any sound, yeah, it's just I live on a college campus, so you got to get used to it. Which is also why the sound may sound different, because I'm not in my normal studio at home. But in terms of actually ranking these assault rifles, right, how am I going to go about ranking them? For the majority of weapons that are just common through legendary and then have their mythic version, that mythic will be counted as that same spot. So for example, something like the MK Alpha assault rifle and Relic's MK Alpha assault rifle, those will be counted in one spot. But weapons that function fundamentally differently, so something like the pulse rifle and the overclocked pulse rifle, those will be counted as 2 separate spots. But in terms of actually ranking these weapons, well, I'm basically just ranking them by which weapon I would rather have more in a game of Fortnite. So for example, I would much rather have the number 15th ranked weapon than the number 30th ranked weapon. Although I do think every single assault rifle in the game's history is usable to an extent, right? So your list is obviously going to look so different than mine. This is all my opinion, but let me know in the comment section below where you think some of the assault rifles should be ranked. With all that being said, be sure to leave this video a like if you go on to enjoy it, and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop if you want to support my YouTube channel. This video took me so long to make, so I would really appreciate that. With all that being said, let's get right into this. All right, so I won't be going in detail on every single assault rifle. There are so many. If I did that, we would be here for probably an hour. So there are going to be some weapons that I will briefly mention for like a second or two and then just move on to the next one. But in my opinion, the worst assault rifle in Fortnite history at number 54 is the makeshift rifle. Yeah, look, I don't got much to say about the makeshift rifle. I think we all can probably agree this is a bottom 5 assault rifle of all time. And you guys know I'm a Chapter 2 Season 6 hater, so absolutely I'm going to put this here at the bottom spot. At the number 53 spot, I guarantee you are going to be angry at me in the comment section about this one. It is the Chapter 4 Scar. I think that people actually underestimate how bad this version of the Scar was. And not only do I think it was one of the worst assault rifles in Chapter 4, I mean, think about it, just in Chapter 4 Season 1, I would rather have the TAC AR, even the Twin Mag, the Red Eye assault rifle, all over the Chapter 4 Scar. Evidently, I actually think it's one of the assault rifles we've ever gotten. That bloom is way out of control. At the number 52 spot is essentially all the Star Wars rifles, so the E11 blaster rifle, the First Order blaster rifle, and the DC-15 blaster rifle. And at the number 51 spot is the Tri-Beam laser rifle. To be honest with you, I mean, I think we all thought that this laser rifle was going to be a lot better than it ended up being. Everyone was like kind of geeked out that we were finally getting a hit scan weapon in chapter 5, but I think we all ended up being disappointed. And another weapon that I guarantee we were all disappointed about at the number 50 spot is the chapter 5 season 2 version of the tactical assault rifle. So as you guys can tell, I'm going to be ranking the 3 different TAC ARs all in separate spots. So the chapter 4 season 1 version, the chapter 5 season 2 version, and of course the original chapter 1 version. To me, it is extremely clear that the chapter 5 season 2 version of the tactical assault rifle is not only one of the worst versions of that weapon, it is actually one of the worst assault rifles ever. It was so bad that it's one of those weapons that I can't believe was actually added into the game, you know what I'm saying? It is just absolutely brutal. I really don't have much else to say about the chapter 5 season 2 TAC AR. It just did terrible damage. I think they tried to buff it a little bit, but to no avail, right? And it actually had really large shoes to fill because we all know the chapter 4 season 1 TAC AR was really, really good, and spoiler, it will be much higher up on this list. At the number 49 spot is the thermal scoped AR, followed up by the number 48 spot, which is Huntmaster Saber's thermal scoped AR. You know, I really guess I could have put these in the same spot, but I kept them differently because Huntmaster Saber's thermal scoped assault rifle, when it came back in chapter 3 season 2, functioned a lot differently than I guess that base version of the thermal scoped AR from chapter 1, if you'll remember. So when I was ranking these, I guess I kind of put the thermal scoped AR thinking it being like the chapter 1 version, and then Huntmaster Saber's thermal scoped AR being the chapter 3 season 2 version, if that makes sense. I mean, I definitely think the chapter 3 season 2 version, basically a rework essentially of the thermal scoped AR, is a lot better than the OG version. I can't really say it by that much, right? And that is why it's probably a bottom 5 to bottom 10 assault rifle of all time, in my opinion. At the number 47 spot, I'm telling you guys, I know there is a comment section full of people down there that love the Havoc suppressed AR, but it's not me. I'm not in that comment section. Again, at the number 47 spot is the Havoc suppressed AR, High Card's Havoc assault rifle, and Heart's Havoc assault rifle, which is by far the worst out of all of them. To this day, I really still don't understand what people see in the Havoc suppressed AR. It was terrible, and in a season that was absolutely loaded with super strong weapons, right? Like the Overclock Pulse Rifle, the Havoc Pump Shotgun, all that stuff, this weapon totally falls to the bottom for me. I have been saying for years that the Havoc suppressed AR is one of the worst assault rifles we've ever seen, and yeah, so now that I'm making this video, I'm glad I can put it down here and actually put it in writing, right? Anyways, at the number 46 spot is the Primal Assault Rifle and Spire Guardian's Primal Assault Rifle, followed up at the number 45 spot by the Drum Gun, which this will include the chapter 5 season 2 drum gun, as well as that legacy OG drum gun from chapter 1. If I was talking about weapons pre-nerf, the legacy drum gun would have to be probably within the top 5. But obviously, as you can see so far in this video, we are talking about weapons in their current state, and the current state of the drum gun is pretty rough. They absolutely nerfed the regular drum gun from chapter 1 into the ground, and when it came back in chapter 5 season 2, even though you were able to put attachments on it, I really didn't see it being anything special. Again, the drum gun from chapter 5 season 2 just kind of felt like a bottom feeder weapon in that season, especially with a shotgun so strong like the Gatekeeper shotgun. You didn't even really need to hold a weapon like this. At the number 44 spot is the Sideways rifle. At the number 43 spot is the Evo Chrome AR, and at the number 42 spot is the Suppressed Scar. You know, I think some people are probably going to question my decision to put the Suppressed Scar so low on this list, but this weapon is really only useful if you're tap firing. If you fully auto this thing, you guys probably know the bloom goes all over the place. I was just never a fan of the Suppressed Scar. I know there is like a little group of people that are really big fans of this weapon, but to me, I am not. At the number 41 spot is the Flapjack rifle, as well as the Enhanced Flapjack rifle. Now, any of you guys that play like first-person shooter games, something like COD, you'd probably think this is an LMG, and you'd probably be pretty right in thinking that, but the Fortnite wiki defines it as an assault rifle, so I'm going to count it for this list. I really did not like the Flapjack rifle. It's just that recoil felt so bouncy. Again, the only advantage this weapon really had was, I think it had something like a 50 bullet clip. I don't know, maybe it's just my inherent bias towards chapter 4 season 3, or I guess my non-bias towards chapter 4 season 3, because I absolutely despise that season, and part of it is because of the loophole, like weapons like the Flapjack rifle that I just really wasn't vibing with. I just think the range really sucked on this thing. In my opinion, it was better used as an SMG than it actually was an assault rifle, and so for that reason, it gets pretty low on this list. At the number 40 spot is Diamond Heart's Enforcer AR, and at the number 39 spot is just the regular Enforcer AR. So I'm actually like kind of confused about this, and you might be confused too why I put the Mythic version as a worse spot than just the regular version. I don't know if I'm just like remembering something wrong, or if the Fortnite Fortnite wiki is wrong, but it says that the Mythic actually does 2 less damage than just the regular version of the Enforcer. Other than that, I believe all the stats are the same, the damage, the fire rate, the headshot multiplier, so I don't really understand why this Mythic was even in the game. Again, let me know in the comment section if I'm wrong here or if I'm missing something. I totally could be, and it's not really like the Enforcer would be much higher on this list, because honestly, it's kind of unfortunate for the Enforcer to be in this spot because it's not really an assault rifle, let's be honest. It really is more akin to something like the Huntress DMR, and so if I was ranking this weapon with all DMRs, then yeah, I think it would be a lot higher, but in terms of just assault rifles, I think the Enforcer fails to do anything better than a lot of the other weapons on this list. It still is a really solid mid to especially long range weapon, but when this weapon was featured in seasons like Chapter 5 Season 1, right, where you had the strongest sniper of all time, the Reaper sniper rifle, the strongest long range weapon of all time, why would you ever take the Enforcer, right? And we'll see that same sentiment with some other weapons from Chapter 5 Season 1. At the number 38 spot, we have just the regular scoped AR, and this is really an interesting one. If you guys remember to Chapter 2 Season 4, we actually got an epic and legendary version of this weapon. I will be keeping it in the same spot as the common through blue version from Chapter 1, right? One of the first ever weapons in the game. It's just too slow, right? I mean, it's an outdated weapon. It, in my opinion, probably needs a bit of a rework, similar to how the Chapter 3 Season 2 thermal scoped AR was reworked, right? I honestly just think it's a pretty poor weapon. At the number 37 spot is the Burst Pulse Rifle, and this is actually a weapon that I totally forgot even existed in the game until I did my research for this video. And yeah, it was an exotic pulse rifle that shot in bursts, and it functioned like your normal pulse rifle would, right? It has infinite first shot accuracy, has a faster fire rate from the hip, but a super sluggish, slow fire rate when you aim down sights, but hits for big time damage when you aim down those sights. My only problem was, and I'm sure you'll see it in the gameplay here, the burst delay between bursts on this weapon was so long. It was honestly like if you didn't hit 1 or 2 of the first 2 shots, you were going to be automatically in trouble in a gunfight. And again, this is not one of those weapons that you can use at close range like something like the TAC AR. This is strictly a medium to long range weapon, and that's it. Like, I guess you could hit fire for the faster fire rate, but you guys get what I'm talking about, right? I don't know, it's kind of a really mid assault rifle, just like a lot of exotic weapons are, right? At the number 36 spot is the Ranger AR from Chapter 3. To me, it is obviously very clearly the worst assault rifle in Chapter 3, at least when you compare it to something like the Hammer assault rifle. It is obviously inferior to that weapon, and the Ranger AR basically functions extremely similar to the Nemesis AR from Chapter 5, which is, as you guys know, a weapon that I do not like. It's essentially like an AK, if you think about it that way, from Chapter 1. It's just not an assault rifle for me. I was always preferring the Hammer over the Ranger. And another weapon that was not from me from Chapter 5 Season 2 at the number 35 spot is the Warforged AR and Ares Warforged AR. Now, I think Ares Warforged AR gets a little bit of a bad rap. I think people are a little too hard on Ares Warforged AR, basically because his medallion was very clearly the worst, so nobody was actually going to fight Ares just to get the weapon, right? You could go to any other boss and get a great mythic weapon as well as a great medallion. I just think the recoil on the Warforged felt so weird. It felt so bouncy in like a horizontal direction, not a vertical direction. I think Chapter 5 Season 2 ARs in general were, for the most part, pretty weak. And again, it is really hard to rank the Chapter 5 ARs because, of course, they're not hit scan like 95% of the weapons on this list are, but at the exchange of being able to put attachments on them. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to rank the Chapter 5 weapons because if you ask me, every single time, 10 out of 10 times, I would rather use a hit scan weapon than a non-hit scan weapon. But the fact that you can put attachments on them, I think that gives them a little bit of a boost. Overall, like, I really did not like the Warforged AR, and I think that's actually a pretty popular sentiment. I would say probably the majority of people did not enjoy the Warforged AR. But yeah, I think this is going to be a hot take, but I mean, here it is. At the number 34 spot is the Burst Assault Rifle from Chapter 1, but specifically the FAMAS, so that being the purple and legendary version from Chapter 1. And you may not even know that this weapon existed, right? Because it was barely in the game. I'm just going off the script here. I'm trying to think. I think it was Chapter 1 Season 4 this weapon was added just for like a couple weeks, and then it was never added back into the game again. It really wasn't that good. I mean, for a purple and legendary version of a burst, it wasn't much of an upgrade. I actually do not think it was an upgrade over something like the blue burst, and it was extremely hard to find. Like, I remember watching videos of people spending hours trying to get their hands on this weapon. It's almost like it didn't exist, like Fortnite didn't want you to use this weapon. 34 is my lucky number, so it kind of hurts to put the burst AR here, but gotta do what I gotta do, right? At the number 33 spot is the infantry rifle, and that being the gray through blue version. I actually separated the purple and legendary version because I think that weapon is much more superior than something like the gray through blue version. The launch version of this infantry rifle would probably be the worst weapon on this list, but of course, we're talking about the current state of the weapon, right, where it is now hit scan, of course. I don't know what that abomination was on launch, but thank God we can forget about that thing. It does not exist anymore, and the current version of the infantry rifle is just okay. I actually do think this is a weapon that really would benefit from putting attachments on it, so it would be interesting to see it come back in Chapter 5, but there haven't been any hints of that happening. At the number 33 spot is the MK Alpha Assault Rifle and Relic's MK Alpha Assault Rifle, and at the number 31 spot is the Tactical Assault Rifle from Chapter 1. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this is the best version of the Tactical Assault Rifle we've ever seen, but I also don't think it's the worst. I think it's decent. Like, it has its benefits. Of course, it's an assault rifle that uses light bullets, which is always a good thing because we all know you always have a surplus of light bullets. And as the name suggests, Tactical Assault Rifle can be used as an assault rifle or really an SMG. It's got a great fire rate, tight hip fire spread, tight bullet spread in general. I honestly just think it gets really outshined by the Chapter 4 Season 1 version. I think that version was significantly better than this version. At the number 30 spot is the Nemesis AR and Montague's Nemesis AR. You know, it actually pains me to put this weapon here because I absolutely despise the Nemesis. If it was entirely up to me, which I mean, I guess it is, but I have to put in some logic here, it would be at the bottom spot. I just despise the Nemesis AR. There's always a group of people in my comment section that always argue me on this every single time. It is inferior to the Striker AR, and in a season, for example, like Chapter 5 Season 1, a lot of ARs, especially the Nemesis, basically became obsolete when you had everyone running around with the Reaper sniper rifle, which basically tormented that entire season. I will say I do like it better than the Warforged AR, but I mean, that's really it. At the number 29 spot is the Burst Assault Rifle from Chapter 1. You know, I think some people like to look at this weapon with rose-tinted glasses, right? You'll hear a lot of people say Blue Burst was better than the OG Scar, you know, Blue Burst supremacy. And yes, before ARs back in the day got nerfed with their headshot multiplier and before they got the fall off damage nerf, yes, this was a top tier assault rifle. But if you watch any of like the unvaulted LTM gameplay of this weapon, like when this weapon is being used in a vacuum with other actual balanced weapons, not like in OG Fortnite, right, in Season 1, Season 2, when there really was no weapon balance, you'll notice that this is basically just your run-of-the-mill burst assault rifle. You know, I hate to say it, but dude, the common burst is awful. And I personally was always your regular M16 looking assault rifle over this version of the burst assault rifle every single time. At the number 28 spot is the Red Eye assault rifle, followed up with the heisted explosive assault rifle at the number 27 spot. I decided to put these weapons right back to back because, well, they are basically the same weapon, except the heisted explosive assault rifle shoots explosives, whereas the Red Eye assault rifle is just your, well, regular Red Eye assault rifle. There are some people out there that I see on Reddit that regard the Red Eye as like one of the best assault rifles of all time. I mean, I think in Zero Build you might be able to make that argument. People absolutely adore this weapon. For me, like, I do see why it's good, and I actually do think the heisted explosive version, the exotic version, is a little bit better. I don't really think it's like anything to write home about, but look, I'm just gonna say one thing. I think the Chapter 4 Season 1 tactical assault rifle was better. That's my hot take for the video. At the number 26 spot is the AK, or the heavy assault rifle, and at the number 25 spot is Meowscles Pew Pew rifle. I also like never know if I pronounce that right. Like, I don't, is it Piao Piao, Pew Pew? I have no idea. Let me know in the comment section. And yeah, Meowscles is basically just a mythic version of the AK, which is why it gets one spot higher than it. The AK pre-nerf was actually insane. This thing was doing some like 96 headshots, and then of course that headshot damage ended up getting nerfed. And I think the AK is basically just a really big hit or miss weapon. Like, if you don't hit those first two shots, you're basically going to be in trouble because the bloom is out of control. And for the mythic version, unfortunately, I just think it's like a product of its environment, right? Like the Chapter 2 Season 2 mythic weapons, I think this kind of falls to the bottom, right? I think it was always Sky's assault rifle, Brutus's minigun, Midas's drum gun. You would always take 10 out of 10 times over this weapon. But in a different season, Meowscles Pew Pew rifle is really good. At the number 24 spot is the tactical assault rifle from Chapter 4 Season 1. And hear me out, because I've been absolutely glazing this thing all video. Dude, this thing with a red dot was absolutely special. It was 100% my favorite weapon in Chapter 4 Season 1. It just felt so unbelievably good to use. Of course, this was hit scan at the time, and if I remember correctly, you could only get it in, I think it was called the Tactical Armory Augment. It was the one that dropped the combat shotgun and this version of the TAC AR, which came with that beautiful red dot sight. You know, the Chapter 4 Season 1 TAC AR hype, like if you used it, I think it was incredible. But I do have to say, obviously, extremely low damage, and I do think that is what holds it back on this list. But with a great fire rate, and of course you had that great red dot sight, it was easy to absolutely beam people that were using shockwave hammers and bouncing all over over the place. At the number 23 spot is the Burst Assault Rifle from Chapter 2, and you might be surprised to know that I'm actually going to include the AUG on this spot. And this was a really tough one for me to rank because personally, I regard the AUG as a top 10 assault rifle we've ever seen in the game. But I think the other versions of this assault rifle are not so great. Of course, thinking about the common through blue version, and actually it did end up getting a legendary version that wasn't the AUG. But if you guys are thinking the same thing I'm thinking like Chapter 2 Season 1, Chapter 2 Season 2 type burst assault rifle. And shortly after that time, actually, they made this weapon go from a 3-round burst to a 2-round burst, which I think was a big buff. Looking kind of retrospectively, should I have ranked these separately? I mean, probably, because I actually really dislike the common through blue version of this weapon, but the purple and legendary version, that being the AUG, I regard super highly, so you guys can see how it ended up at this like middle percent of the list. Look, that Chapter 2 Season 2 AUG was absolutely special. At the number 22 spot is the Hammer AR, and at the number 21 spot is the Striker Burst Rifle, both weapons from Chapter 3. Hammer is a weapon that I'm really not actually a big fan of. I think that horizontal recoil is just out of control, but I will acknowledge that it is right on the borderline of probably being a top 20 assault rifle in the game. I actually think there's going to be a lot of people in the comment sections who are going to think that it actually should be a lot higher, maybe even a top 10 assault rifle. I know people absolutely love this weapon. It's just not for me, and I guess I really could say the same thing about the Striker Burst Rifle, especially in no build. The Striker Burst Rifle absolutely shined. But as you guys know, I am not a no build player. I play build mode primarily, so the Striker Burst Rifle was not as good in that mode, in my opinion. Just in general, I think the assault rifle selection in Chapter 3 was quite weak. I mean, the Evo Chrome assault rifle from Chapter 3 Season 4 as one of the worst assault rifles of all time on this list, and yeah, I don't think that was great. Ranger is like okay, and here we have the Hammer and Striker a little bit higher. At the number 20 spot is the Sloan Striker Burst Rifle from Chapter 3 Season 2. I think some people are going to argue with me here. Objectively, this is probably a top 10 assault rifle of all time. For me, this was a tough one to rank because, well, I did not play a lot of Chapter 3 Season 2, but I have watched plenty of gameplay on it. I've watched plenty of content to know that this thing was really, really good. I mean, 35 damage from a burst AR is pretty solid. If you've watched my best AR video, I did actually, if I remember correctly, put this weapon on there, but since Chapter 5 Season 4 has come out, I do think actually that there is a better version of this weapon, right? In, of course, the Striker Burst Rifle from Chapter 5 Season 4. I know, guys, it's confusing. They literally have like 7 versions of the Striker Burst Rifle, so I'll talk about that weapon when I get there. And a trio of drum guns here. At the number 19 spot is Jules' drum gun. At the number 18 spot is Shadow Midas's drum gun, and at the number 17 spot is Midas's drum gun. Look, if this was prime Chapter 2 Season 2 launch, Midas's drum gun would be the best weapon on this list. But all of these weapons have been tuned, and honestly, the drum gun you could probably think of as an SMG. It is technically considered an assault rifle. I've always thought of it as an SMG. I've always used it like an SMG. But I did my research, and if I'm correct, I believe that all 3 of these weapons have literal identical stats. They're just reskins of one another, except Midas's drum gun does have 1 higher structure damage than Shadow Midas's and Jules, so that's why it's higher than that. I mean, in terms of ranking Shadow Midas's and Jules, I just think Shadow Midas's looks cooler, so it gets 1 spot higher. They're literally the same weapon. At the number 16 spot is the Herald's Burst Rifle, and I think at this point in the list, this is when we're starting to get into some like must pick up weapons when you see them, right? I know there are going to be people who are going to watch this video and be like, dude, the Mythic Evo Chrome AR actually has the same exact stats as Herald's Burst Assault Rifle. And I mean, while that is not entirely true because the structure damages differently, the damage wise, yes, they are the same weapons. But the Mythic Evo Chrome Assault Rifle was honestly like really, really hard to get. The only way you could do it was getting the damage up from common to legendary, or I guess, I mean, like if you picked up a blue one or a purple one off the ground, you would still have to do damage to get all the way to the Mythic version. For Herald's Burst, all you had to do was just kill the boss and get your hands on this weapon. It is incredible. The structure damage is what makes it stick out, right? I know it sounds stupid like putting a weapon higher because of the structure damage, but this thing could one burst fully built walls, especially wood walls. Like your bullets would actually leak through this. It would just delete builds. It was like, think about it as like a heavy sniper, right? You could one-shot builds, like the same thing but with the Herald's Burst Rifle. In terms of assault rifles in Fortnite history, I would actually go on a limb and say it's actually kind of underrated. At the number 15 spot, we have the Combat AR, and at the number 14 spot is the Machinist Combat AR. You know, the Combat AR was kind of a tough weapon to rank for me because personally, I just am not a fan of the Combat AR. But looking at it objectively, this is a good weapon. It really is all about maintaining that recoil, right? Because if you've ever used this weapon, or if you've been using it in Chapter 5 Season 4, you shoot like 5 bullets, this thing goes straight up to the moon. But if you're on controller, right, you hold down that right stick stick, this thing is going to shred. I know it's had like a couple different iterations, like the different chapter versions of it, but I think especially the chapter 5 season 3 version, the Machinist Combat AR, was the best version that we've seen of this weapon, even with it not being hit scan. But since we're talking about chapter 5 weapons not being hit scan, let's talk about the Striker AR as well as Nisha Striker AR at the number 13 spot. I actually do think Nisha Striker AR on its own is probably like a top 5 weapon. I think in my best AR video I did have it there, but after using the regular Striker AR in chapter 5 season 4, I think we can all agree that it is absolutely one of the best assault rifles we've gotten in chapter 5. I just think that this weapon like really needs attachments. Like, attachments are an absolute crutch on this weapon, because without attachments I think this weapon gets kind of out of control. But like, for example, with a fully kitted Striker AR, something like you see with Nisha Striker AR, you get that red dot sight, the extended mag, the suppressor, you then see the real strength of this weapon. And to me, this was like the only actual usable AR in chapter 5 season 1. Again, like I said, everybody was running around with Reaper ARs, and you can't blame them. It was literally one of the best weapons of all time. But the Striker AR, I felt, was one of the only weapons that if someone did miss that Reaper shot, the Striker was one of the only weapons that could actually counter that. I am not a big fan at all of the chapter 5 weapons, but to me the Striker is one of the best. At the number 12 spot is Ocean's Burst Assault Rifle, the Mythic from chapter 2 season 3, and at the number 11 spot is the Striker Burst Rifle from chapter 5 season 4, as well as Emma Frost's Striker Burster AR. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna group these together, right, kind of close to each other, because they do function quite similarly. Ocean's was really good. It was essentially just a legendary AUG with, I believe, a couple more bursts. So you guys heard me absolutely glaze the AUG a couple spots ago, so it shouldn't surprise you that when I have a spot that is just the AUG with a couple more bursts in it, yeah, it's going to get a little bit higher on this list. And for the Striker Burst Rifle from Chapter 5 Season 4, I think a lot of people kind of overlooked this weapon on launch, but after playing a lot, I think a lot of people will say that this is the best assault rifle this season. I personally would go as far as to say it's the best assault rifle we've seen in Chapter 5. It is a really good burst AR, and the big thing that kind of shines here is that burst delay. There is almost like no delay. It almost feels like a fully auto weapon. I think without a scope, this thing really lacks, but once you get any of those really good scopes, good attachments on it, this thing absolutely shreds. I love this weapon. And in a season where there are so many people using jetpacks going left to right, you really need a weapon that's going to be accurate, and the Striker is absolutely that. If you watched any part of like the FNCS that happened a couple of days ago, I tuned in just for a little bit, and yeah, everyone was using Striker bursts. At the number 10 spot is the Stark Industries rifle, and at the number 9 spot is the Pulse rifle. So I'm going to kind of talk about these weapons in the same breath, right, because they are essentially reskins of one another. Or I guess if you want to get real technical, right, the Pulse rifle is actually just a reskin Stark Industries rifle. But I think these are two incredibly popular weapons. They are actually almost identical. I mean, let me just read it out here. The legendary Pulse rifle has a DPS of 113 with a damage of 54 and a fire rate of 2.1, whereas the Stark Industries rifle has a damage, the legendary of course, of 53 with a fire rate of 2.2 and a DPS of 116. So only 3 damage in their DPSs that separate these weapons, of course, in the aim down sights version. Of course, the regular Pulse rifle does a little bit more damage but has a slower fire rate, whereas the Stark Industries rifle has a little bit of a faster fire rate, like barely a faster fire rate, and just a little bit less damage. I mean, they're so similar, you could switch one or the other. It's honestly personal preference here. I just personally thought that the Pulse rifle was a little bit better than the Stark Industries rifle, which is why it is barely ahead of it. And kind of similarly to all these weapons, at the number 8 spot is the Sloan's Pulse rifle. So yeah, like I said, it's interchangeable with the Pulse and the Stark Industries rifle, but what's not interchangeable is the Sloan's Pulse rifle being higher than both those weapons. This is an absolutely beefy assault rifle. I think it does like 56, 57 damage a shot with that infinite first shot accuracy. And this weapon does actually have a higher DPS than both the Pulse rifle and the Stark Industries rifle, so no surprise that's going to be higher than those two. It's really just a beefier version of those two rifles, and I actually do think it is a top 10 assault rifle we've ever gotten. This thing was big time damage. At the number 7 spot is the regular assault rifle, just the M16 essentially. M16, M4, I don't know, whatever you guys want to call it, just your basic common through blue assault rifle that was in the game for so long. It really was like one of the core Fortnite weapons, right? It is just a great all-around assault rifle, really solid damage, great fire rate, great structure damage, great accuracy. It's just, you can hold it and use it in every single situation. Think about it like if I was making a sniper video and I was talking about the bolt action sniper rifle. It's the same way, right? With this version of the assault rifle compared to every other assault rifle. It's just good in every single situation. It's almost like something like a jack of all trades, but master of none, right? It doesn't do any one thing like incredibly well, like something like the pulse rifle does with incredible damage. It is simply just good at everything. And for that, I think it absolutely deserves to be a top 10 assault rifle of all time. I don't think there's going to be much argument there. At the number 6 spot is the purple and legendary infantry rifle. And I don't know, I think some of you may be surprised to see it ranked this high. I truly do think this weapon is on the cusp of being a top 5 assault rifle. It's really just the fact that you essentially have to be a good player. You got to have a good shot to be able to use this weapon effectively. But in the hands of a good player, I think you can make the argument that the infantry rifle is the best assault rifle we've ever seen. I mean, look at Mongrel use this thing. Look at any of those high tier Fortnite pros use this weapon. They are absolutely destroying everybody. It's because of that first shot accuracy with that big damage and pretty decent fire rate for a semi-auto weapon. I actually really love this version of the infantry rifle. It's one of my favorite weapons of all time. I think I can speak for everybody when I say please bring back the infantry rifle in chapter 5. But speaking of the number 5, at the number 5 spot is the Scar from the chapter 1 to chapter 3, that version of it. For basically, I would argue like the first probably 10, 11 seasons of Fortnite, this was the best weapon that was in the game, besides of course like the pump shotgun or something like that. This was like the go-to like medium range, high tier assault rifle, right? It didn't get any better than the Scar. We've all seen the memes, right? People team killing back in the day for the gold Scar. Like the gold Scar became like a cultural icon. My little brother's phone case back in the day was like him opening a chest and having like 3 chests next to each other and got a gold Scar from every one of them. Like that's how big of a deal the Scar was. Now, if I remember correctly, I don't have the gameplay planned out or anything, but I think it's going to be the original version of the Scar before the headshot nerf, like the 98 headshot damage Scar. I'm not particularly talking about that version of the Scar, although that is included in this spot. I'm more just talking about the current state of the Scar the last time we saw it, which I think was chapter 3, if I remember correctly. It could have been chapter 2 though. Yeah, I mean, look, I think this is a lock to be a top 5 here. Could have been a little bit higher. Again, if we were talking about the OG version of Scar, easily a top 3, but we're not talking about that version, so I got to take that into account. Really solid assault rifle still, but do not get it twisted with the chapter 4 version of Scar, which is absolutely awful. At the number 4 spot is Sky's assault rifle, or basically just the mythic Scar from chapter 2 season 2. I mean, look, there should be no surprise it's this high on the list. They basically gave the best weapon in Fortnite for like 12 seasons really, and just gave it a mythic version. And since it does have a different fire rate and different damage than the regular Scar, it is in its own spot. This was one of those weapons in chapter 2 season 2 that was a must pick and was the top tier mythic weapons. I would argue probably this, Brutus's minigun, and of course Midas's drum gun. This weapon was just insane. Like, I don't really have to talk much more about it. I'm sure the gameplay is going to speak for itself. Easy top 5 weapon here, right? I think also one of the strengths of this weapon that's not talked about enough is the faster fire rate basically allows it to handle like an SMG at close range, but the accuracy of the Scar and the high damage allows it to be a really solid mid-range assault rifle. But anyways, we have gotten into the top 3 here. These 3 weapons, or I guess technically 4, you're going to see what I talk about when I get to the number 1 spot, are just absolutely broken assault rifles. These are top tier, not only assault rifles, but top tier weapons in Fortnite history, right? And at the number 3 spot is going to be the Twin Mag AR. I think the reason why this weapon shines so much, especially in a season with the rocket ram where people were flying all over the place, you really needed a super accurate weapon, low recoil, good damage, and that's exactly what you got with the Twin Mag. Dude, look, I don't know what they're putting in these Twin Mag weapons, but if they're going to keep making them this good, we need more Twin Mag weapons, right? Not only Twin Mag AR, but the Twin Mag SMG as well. I don't know about anybody else, but I literally felt like I was cheating. Like, I almost felt like I had aimbot when I was using this weapon. It just felt so great to use. The combination of like all these really good like characteristics made for an awesome assault rifle. Like, think about it: low recoil, great damage, great fire rate, quick reload speed, of course every other reload I think it was because it's a Twin Mag, and that absolutely beautiful scope. Combine all of that, like, you just have all the makings for a really good weapon, and that it was. But just slightly beating it out at the number 2 spot is the overclocked pulse rifle. Just how broken of a weapon can it get? Like, I don't know that it can can go any more broken than this weapon. Like, as I watch gameplay for this weapon, it's so hard to believe that this thing actually existed in a Fortnite lobby, but it did. It was an incredible fire rate from the hip. Like, I'm talking SMG level fire rate from the hip, and of course you had the aim down sights damage that was big time damage. Almost 60 damage a shot with first shot accuracy. Like, you could literally tag somebody for 60 damage from like 100 meters away. This is really like one of those weapons, one of the only weapons in Fortnite history that to me like truly instills fear in you. Like, if someone starts charging your box, hip firing the overclock pulse rifle, like, you better kinetic blade, like, get out of there. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is such an easy lock to be here. Like, when I started making this video, sometimes I start from like the worst, or sometimes I start from the best when I'm originally starting out to ranking them, just getting the obvious ones out of the way, and this was one of those weapons. But I do think it gets slightly beat out by our number 1 spot. And at that number 1 spot, what I believe to be the best assault rifle in Fortnite history, it is the MK7 and the Foundation's Mythic MK7. I mean, do I really need to talk about this weapon? I know, like, I hate to talk about like the pre-nerf versions of the weapons, but on launch, the Foundation's MK7 is literally the most broken weapon I've ever seen in Fortnite history, no question about it. Like, it was actually so busted, it's insane. Even after the nerfs to not only the Mythic version, but the regular MK7, I do still think it actually is the best assault rifle. If I remember correctly, I think this was actually the first ever weapon to implement the red dot, or like kind of the first person shooter aspect of the game, whereas before this it was always third person every time you shot a weapon, except for, you know, some of your obviously scoped weapons like the bolt action sniper, any of your snipers, you know what I'm saying? Just what an unreal weapon. Not only is this the best assault rifle of all time, I think you could make the argument this is probably a top 5 weapon in the entire history of Fortnite. It is just such a beam. I mean, I think the players who didn't play in Chapter 3 and did play in Chapter 4 and got their hands on this weapon, particularly the Foundations version, really got to see firsthand how good this weapon was. I made a community post a couple days ago now asking what are your guys' favorite assault rifles of all time, and like I would say 90% of that said that it was the MK7, and I would agree with you. This is my favorite assault rifle of all time, and honestly, clearly to me, the best assault rifle we've ever seen in the history of Fortnite. Today, we are going to take a look at what I believe to be the most forgotten about Fortnite weapons in the entire game, and that is bows. Bows have seemed to go by the wayside, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about them, but I sure haven't. And so in this video, we are going to rank every single bow in Fortnite history from worst to best. For continuity's sake, I will be excluding crossbows from this list, so Cupid's crossbows, Fiend Hunters, those types of things will not be on this list. And I also will not be including any LTM exclusive bows, so Hawkeye's bow is out of the conversation. If you're going to enjoy this ranking video, be sure to leave a like, drop me a comment letting me know what ranking video you would like to see next, and be sure to use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop if you would like to support the work that I do here on YouTube. And let's just get right into this. At our number 11 spot, in my opinion, the worst bow in Fortnite history, that's the makeshift bow. And it's almost laughable now because in every ranking video, all the makeshift weapons are always the worst. The makeshift AR, the makeshift revolver, and the makeshift shotgun are all atrocious, and the makeshift bow follows suit. Look, 52 damage for a bow is not cutting it, and the only reason you would ever take this bow would be to craft either the rare primal bow or the rare mechanical bow. That's it. You would have to genuinely be crazy to try and use this weapon without the intent of crafting it and upgrading it. It's awful and deserves this spot on the list. And at number 10, we have the primal bow. The primal bow was definitely better than the makeshift bow. The primal bow did 75 damage a shot and had a headshot multiplier of 2.5 times, which I believe is like 187 or something like that. And the only reason why it's really this far down the list is I actually think the weapons that you upgrade to, that being the primal flame bow and primal stink bow, of course you need the base primal bow to then upgrade to the flame bow and stink bow, and I just think that you were better off with the mechanical bow because I think that bow's upgrades were just a little bit better. And look, I apologize in advance for saying bow so many times in this video. But yeah, it's not terrible, but just very run-of-the-mill and just kind of fell down to the bottom of this list. And at our number 9 spot on this list, that is the mechanical bow. And by all damage stats, the mechanical bow and the primal bow are exactly the same. Same damage, DPS of course, because you're only shooting one bow, and headshot multiplier of 2.5, right? They're the exact same damage-wise. And I just briefly touched on it, but my reasoning for putting the mechanical bow ahead of the primal bow is simply because the mechanical bow weapon upgrades, I believe, are much better than the primal weapon upgrades. And I believe that the mechanical shockwave bow and the mechanical explosive bow are better than the primal flame bow and primal stink bow, which we will talk about later. So in my head, that inherently makes the mechanical bow a lot more valuable than the primal bow. So yeah, hopefully that wasn't too confusing, but that is why it gets its spot ahead of the primal bow. And at the number 7 spot is the primal stink bow. And honestly, before I made this video, I would have told you that this is the worst bow. But after doing some research, it isn't quite the worst bow, but it is really bad. And I will say one thing about this bow: the stink area of effect when you shoot the bow at them and it explodes into the stink cloud is so small. In fact, if someone is actually in one corner of the box and you shoot it at their wall, it will not hit them through the wall. It is that small. With the stink grenades, of course, if someone's sitting in a box, you throw it anywhere on their box, as long as they're in that 1x1 tile, they will get hit by it, but that's not the case with the stink bow. So don't even bother trying to use this thing to force people out of structures and walls, because it doesn't work. I'm serious, go try it for yourself. The area of effect is so small. With that being said though, you do get okay damage. With the legendary version, you are doing 83 damage, and of course you get the lasting stink effect too. So your best bet is to just use it like a regular bow, hope you stick someone, hit someone with it, and get the extra stink damage after. At the end of the day though, it is an extremely mid bow. And at our number 6 spot is the unstable bow, our first exotic on the list, and this is a pretty interesting one. If you don't know, the unstable bow basically just gives you a random bow. That's it. Every time you use the trigger, pull back the bow, it will give you a different arrow, whether that's a shockwave, a fire, a cluster, anything, it'll give you a random one. And I have it basically smack dab in the middle of this list because it can either be really good depending on the bow you get, or really bad. If you get a shockwave bow, for example, right, in a time where you really need it, then it's really good. But if you get something like a mechanical bow or a stink bow, then you're not going to be too happy. So yeah, this one's kind of a toss-up, but take with it what you will. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, so that's why it's right in the middle of this list. And at our number 5 spot, that's going to be the primal flame bow. And the primal flame bow is really good, don't get me wrong, and what actually makes it even better is the fact that you can one-shot headshot with this bow. I believe the only other bow on this list so far that you could do that with was the primal stink bow. So being able to one-shot headshot, that is in build mode, not with overclock shield, is really valuable. It was the same thing with my snipers video. If you didn't see that video, go check it out. Those ones who can one-shot headshot, aka do over 200 damage on a headshot, are going to be better than the ones that can, for the most part. I also think that the flame effect is actually one of the better ones that we've seen. Of course, there really are the 4 core ones. It's shockwave, flame, cluster like the grenades, and then the stink, and I believe the flame aspect is really good. The problem here is fire doesn't really work like this anymore. Of course, in the seasons when it was out, it did, but if it were ever to come back now, the fire effect would essentially just be kind of useless. But I don't really care. I would much rather take this than the stink bow, that's for sure. And at our number 4 spot is the mechanical explosive bow, and I also paired Raz's explosive bow here in this same spot. Of course, Raz's explosive bow is just the mythic version of the mechanical explosive bow. And it is important to note, all the bows with the effects, so like I just mentioned, shockwave, flame, stink, and cluster, all do the exact same damage on an actual bow landing shot, right? So in the rare rarity, it does 75, in the epic rarity, it does 79, and in the legendary rarity, it does 83, meaning that you can one-shot headshot when you have any of these bows, the legendary version, in your hands. So if they all do the same initial damage on a bow shot, then the question becomes, what is the best effect? And I do believe the cluster is the second best effect in front of the flame and stink effects. And I'm trying not to put Raz's explosive bow too much into this placing because that bow is just miles better than any of the bows that I've listed previously. But yeah, I think the cluster grenade effect on this bow is extremely strong, really good, especially in duos or squads. You have people that are close to each other in each other's box. You can get really good cluster damage on multiple opponents. I think it's really good, but not quite the best mechanical bow we will see on this list. But absolutely one of the best bows on this list at our number 3 spot is the grappler bow. It is the second and final exotic on this list. And this is the first bow on this list where we really start to see mobility come into play, and that adds a whole new aspect, and you guys know how valuable mobility is in Fortnite. The damage is better than any of the bows on this list. At almost 90 damage a shot, you are absolutely going to one-shot headshot and are doing more base damage. And the prime function of this bow is actually mobility more so than damage though. The player who uses uses the bow will be pulled towards the location the arrow lands, right? So if you land the arrow on a person, it will pull you to that person. Now, the main downside to this is that the grappler bow has a much lower range than other bows. But important to note here is that players will not take fall damage after grappling. That's absolutely massive. Better damage than the bows on this list, and mobility. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer that this is within the top 3 bows. The only real downside besides the range is the fact that it's an exotic, so it's not very common. It's kind of tough to find, and honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if there were some people watching this video who never used this bow. But at our number 2 spot, and you may have expected it to be at the number 1 spot, that's the mechanical shockwave bow. I do believe that this is the best mechanical bow we have ever seen. I mean, you literally have a pocket, how many arrows could you hold? 30, basically a pocket 30 shockwave grenades. That's insane. It is such a versatile weapon. I don't really have to explain how it works. You guys know how shockwave grenades work, but if you're in a box with somebody and you get kind of caught in trouble, just shoot the bow at your feet and you'll be flown out of that box. If you do a lot of damage to somebody, you want to push them, just shoot this at your feet and you can go towards them, and you still are getting one-shot headshots, so you're still doing good damage with the bow. As well as this, if you actually stuck somebody with it, of course it would use the shockwave effect and send them flying, which I thought was really cool. The ability to hold a weapon and mobility in the exact same spot and not have to worry about 2 separate inventory slots for them. Of course, those inventory slots are so precious, and to have them just combined in one is really good. Unfortunately, in chapter 4, it kind of fell behind the shockwave hammer, but if you couldn't get a shockwave hammer, the mechanical shockwave bow was nothing to complain about. Of course, there were many augments that were based around bows, and there was even an augment, if I remember correctly, that would just drop you one of these, which is really strong. It is absolutely no doubt one of the best bows we have ever seen. But at the number 1 spot, and honestly, maybe the most forgotten about weapon ever, that's the boom bow. And no, I am not talking about TNT's kaboom bow. That thing sucks. And you are getting big time damage here. 115 damage a shot is massive from a bow. You're essentially using a sniper rifle at this point. But even more importantly, you are using shells. If you don't know, this shot a shotgun shell instead of a arrow. And of course, we all know you basically have 100, 200 shells at a time. So that ammo is not a problem to get. You also had incredible splash damage. The splash damage on the boom bow was 100 damage. So even if you couldn't land a shot, just land it anywhere near them and they will take basically an RPG shot 100 damage. Those are big time numbers. It also deals decent damage to structures, so you can use the boom bow to destroy freshly built structures. The boom bow is an incredible weapon, so fun to use. I actually wish it would come back, and honestly, it only really damages you if you hit right under yourself, so the boom bow can actually be used at close range. Of course, that's not the situation you would want to use it in, but you can actually do that. Although completely forgotten about, it was in the game for 1 day in Chapter 2 Season 1, and hasn't come back since. It is absolutely the best bow we have ever seen. Melee weapons in Fortnite are often at the center of much controversy, and over the years we have seen some incredible melee weapons, but also some really lackluster melee weapons, and today we are going to rank every single melee weapon in Fortnite's history. As a quick side note, I will not be ranking the Mandalorian's Amban sniper rifle here, as that did have a melee attack, but it wasn't its own melee weapon, so I won't count it here. And I would like to preface at the beginning of this video, I am mostly ranking them on not only just the melee attack, but also if they have some other benefit to them, they're going to be higher on this list, such as something like the kinetic blade, where you can use it as mobility and a melee weapon. I will also be grouping the TMNT mythics together, as well as the lightsabers. It just makes everything more succinct and clear. And if you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop if you'd like to support the work here I do on YouTube. But finally, let's get right into this ranking. Alright, these bottom 5 are weapons that you should probably never pick up, and you're almost going to get killed every single time you use them, so good luck. Starting at number 15 is the Sideways Scythe. I do actually believe this is the worst melee weapon we have ever seen. It's just way too clunky and way too slow. When you're in a box with somebody with a melee weapon, you need something fast, quick, that you're going to be able to move around with and avoid those big shotgun shots, and this was just not it. The Scythe was introduced in Chapter 2 Season 8 and has never come back since, and probably never will come back again. As well as this, you had extremely limited mobility, and honestly, the only advantage you got from this was the higher FOV you would get when picking it up. And in our number 14 slot is actually just the harvesting tool, the regular pickaxe that every Fortnite player on the map spawns spawns in with. Yes, I actually do believe this is better than the sideways scythe. At least with the harvesting tool, you just get it when you spawn in. You don't have to worry about go looking for it or opening chests or going into these big zombie bubble things from Chapter 2, Season 8. No, like, you just get it. So its availability makes it a little bit better in my opinion. Now, we are talking about the harvesting tool doing 20 damage a hit. When it did 10, it was definitely the worst melee weapon. But like 20 damage honestly isn't terrible. Look, I know the sideways scythe does more damage, but I just think the harvesting tool is better. Also, like, you can farm mats with it. You can get materials. I mean, that's a pretty good bonus, I would say. It's like just comparing bad and even worse, so it really doesn't matter which one was 14 or 15, but I don't know. I think the harvesting tool was better. I mean, you hit somebody for 160 with your shotgun, your SMG's not reloaded, just give them 2 swings of the pickaxe, they're done. And at the number 13 spot, we have the Kingsman Umbrella. If you didn't know the Kingsman Umbrella existed, I wouldn't blame you. It was barely in the game during Chapter 2, Season 2, and a lot of people think this was a collab weapon, but that's actually not the case. This was never part of an official collaboration in Fortnite. And the Kingsman Umbrella was simply just a worse version of lightsabers. It had basically 1 or 2 saving graces. One, you could block a very little amount of bullets, maybe 10-15 bullets you could block with the umbrella, and you could also save yourself from fall damage, which of course is always a good thing. The Kingsman Umbrella though really struggles with that final hit. I don't know if you remember, but after 2 or 3 swings, it would like super wind up, almost like you're swinging a baseball bat, and that animation would take forever. You'd just be a sitting duck. But in a season where close range weapons were absolutely dominant, like the Spaz shotgun, Midas's drum gun, Brutus's minigun, really good SMG meta, the Kingsman Umbrella was just not it at all. And at number 12, we have the Howler Claws, which were again just barely in the game in Chapter 3, Season 4. And some of you guys may actually have expected these to be lower on the list, maybe as the worst or the second worst, but they're actually not terrible. Don't get me wrong, they're bad. I still believe they're a bottom 5 melee weapon ever, but the marking ability, that kind of recon ability, if you remember, you'll howl and then it'll give the kind of red mark above any opponent's heads that are closed. That's pretty helpful. I think the Howler Claws get a bad rap because they are a mythic item and they should not be a mythic item, right? And when you compare an item like this to, let's just say, the Foundation's MK7, right? Those are in the same category of weapon. The Howler Claw absolutely falls to the bottom. I also just think it was too much work to go out of your way and have to do the ritual at the altar, I believe it was, and then you had to get the Howler Claws when you emoted there for a little bit. Like, I don't know many people that would go out of their way for the Howler Claws. If they dropped in a chest or something, I think it's a little bit of a different story, but for me, still a very bad melee weapon. And right in front of the Howler Claws at number 11 is Wolverine's Claws from Chapter 2, Season 4. Look, I just think that they're a better version of the Howler Claws. We knew when we saw Wolverine get introduced into Chapter 2, Season 4 that we were going to get a mythic melee weapon, and if you remember, Wolverine was actually really hard to take down, so these were not easy to get. They were actually a lot of work. Like, Wolverine was hard. I mean, he had a ton of health. He would regen his health. He would revive himself if you didn't finish him. He was tough, and I don't think that his claws were worth going through that whole fight. With that being said, though, I do believe they are the best melee weapon we have seen up to this point, and you also get a pretty good mobility kind of ability here. Like, it was almost like a little mini impulse grenade. You would press the left trigger, and then you would kind of go flying into the air for a little bit, and he also had a really good smash ability where you would, like, spin in the air, and it would do, like, really good damage to structure, so for that, it is pretty good. But again, as a mythic item, I just don't think it stands up to other mythic items, and these bottom 5 items are honestly items that if you're in a box with somebody, most of the time you're just going to get shotgun to the face anyways. And at number 10, we have yet another mythic, that's She-Hulk's Fists. And the previous 5 items I think are items that are definitively the 5 worst melee weapons, but She-Hulk's Fists I think you could put a couple of spots higher. It was actually really good, but unfortunately it just falls in that number 10 spot. Like, ahead of this we have just so much better melee weapons that are coming up. The one thing I will say about She-Hulk's Fists is you had a really awesome, like, mobility, like, jump in the air attack that would, like, slam down. That was a really good attack, and I just thought that this was more satisfying to use. Again, those melee weapons where you're just kind of static in one spot, it's hard to move around quick, are not great, but with She-Hulk's Fists, you can almost treat it like a little shockwave grenade. If you want to get out of a box, just pop that ability, you go flying into the air. Like, it was pretty good. Again, cut me some slack if I don't go into crazy detail about these melee weapons, because I was never a crazy user of melee weapons. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but She-Hulk's Fists, I have gotten killed by a couple times. They're not bad. And number 9 is the Chains of Hades, and I'm waiting for everybody in the comments to rip me on this one. It seems like all my subscribers absolutely love the Chains of Hades, but they're not my favorite. Look, yes, you can hit people through walls, I get it. And the one thing that the Chains of Hades have over melee weapons here is actually the range. Chains of Hades had pretty good range for a melee weapon, right? When you think of melee, you think you gotta be right inside of their box, like right next to them, just smacking them in the face. But with Chains of Hades, you actually got pretty good range. You could bring somebody closer to you from, I don't know, 15, 20 meters away. Look, they're not a bad melee weapons. I think we're starting to get into the point of this list where the melee weapons are starting to become pretty good and pretty usable. I just thought in Chapter 5, Season 2, I didn't think that there was a spot in my inventory where I would take the Chains of Hades over something else. And in my opinion, that's all it really comes down to. I just felt like I never wanted to hold the Chains of Hades over my shotgun or over my SMG or over my sniper, you know what I'm saying? But anyways, at the number 8 spot, we have the TMNT melee weapons / mythics. I'm keeping them all together in one because it would just be too difficult to rank all of them separately. They're all pretty similar. And these are really solid weapons. They're all really good. Not only as a melee weapon are they good, but also the mobility. And this is the first time in the list where we're really starting to see like solid melee weapons also have solid mobility aspects, right? Those previous items are mainly just melee weapons, right? But now we're starting to get into some items that also have mobility as well, which puts them higher on the list. They were just fun to use. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a super fun IP, and this whole collab was a really good idea, and I think a lot of people enjoyed just using these kind of iconic melee weapons, right? I mean, you know, Leonardo's katanas, Michelangelo's nunchucks, like those types of things. Those are iconic weapons, and they weren't that difficult to get your hands on, right? And I think that's also something that's important to consider here. And at number 7, we have lightsabers, and I think this is the first controversial pick on this list. Lightsabers are probably like the most popular melee weapons in Fortnite. I don't think that's a crazy statement to make, and they were just too difficult to rank by themselves because there's so many different types of lightsabers. I wasn't going to rank them just because they had different colors, you know what I'm saying? So I kept them all here together. But what I will say is the lightsabers got a pretty big revamp, and not even entirely a revamp. I can't even say that because they just added new versions of the lightsabers that were really, really good. I always just felt like the Chapter 2 Season 1 lightsabers, the original ones, were always like kind of mid, to be honest with you. Like really all they did was just act as a melee weapon and then just block bullets. But then once they started giving them like these special abilities where you could like, you know, pick up the ground and throw them at your opponent, like, okay, then they started to get really strong. So honestly, I think you could move them anywhere on this list, higher or lower. I think you would be able to do that. I don't think that they're a great melee item, but I also don't think they're a terrible one. That's why they're like really smack dab in the middle of this list. At number 6, we have Chapter 5 Season 1's Grapple Blade. And I'll be honest with you, I actually really miss the Grapple Blade. This was a must-have in my opinion in Chapter 5. And honestly, I actually think of the Grapple Blade as more of a mobility weapon than a melee weapon, but it is a melee weapon, so it gets put on this list. My only complaint with the Grapple Blade is sometimes it just did feel a little bit clunky, as in it just didn't really feel smooth to use. Like for example, I think the ODM gear would be an example of something that was a lot smoother to use than the Grapple Blade, but kind of functioned similarly. But it just wasn't that bad of a melee weapon, and it was really versatile, right? You could use it as mobility, you could use it as a melee weapon, or if you remember, you could like grab somebody with it and you would do that 10 damage and you would like latch onto them. Like that's pretty cool. I thought the Grapple Blade was a really good item, really creative and unique item in Chapter 5, and I honestly wish it would come back. And now we have reached the number 5 spot. These are these items that really just stand above the rest and almost automatic pickups when you see them on the ground. With that being said, at number 5, we have the Nitro Fists from our current season, Chapter 5, Season 3. On launch, I think you could make the argument this is a top 3 melee weapon ever, probably top 2. Pre-nerf, you could just run through anybody's walls with this thing. It was unreal, and if you played at the beginning of the season, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And this is that part of the list where we really start to see the mobility come out of some of these melee weapons. When you combine incredible mobility with a really good melee weapon, yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Again, like I had mentioned, when these things launched, they were so strong, but they got absolutely nerfed into the ground. I'm just reading the patch notes here. Increased Nitro Fist reload cooldown from 8 seconds to 11 seconds, reduced air punch damage against players from 70 to 50, reduced punch structure damage from 130 to 60, reduced air punch damage from 250 to 90. Like, it just keeps going. It got absolutely nerfed into the ground, and now I think it's just kind of an okay melee weapon, but a really good mobility weapon, so that's kind of where it gets the balance from. It also just feels really satisfying and really fun to use, so I'll give it that too. At number 4, we have the ODM gear, and honestly, I think you can make an argument for this to be number 2 or 3. It was a really good item, and again, you're going to keep hearing it with these items in the top 5. The mobility is just incredible and almost kind of outshines the actual melee factor of the weapon. And this was just a really versatile weapon, right? Of course, the main function was the grapple effect for mobility, but also you can grapple onto 2 points at once. You also have the attacking function, which of course is the melee ability, which is kind of interesting because you're able to like prepare and then launch the attack, right? Which grapples you onto the reticle. You also have that like rotating, spinning area of effect attack. And then even after you hit somebody, you have that little shockwave effect where you like float in the air. And even more importantly, you can attack several times back to back to back. It's just relentless. There's no real cooldown on the attack. I don't think there's any surprise to anybody watching this video to see this in the top 5, and honestly, I think some people would probably push it higher. And this is an example of a melee weapon that deserves the mythic rarity. And inside our top 3 now, at number 3 is the kinetic blade. I am a sucker for the kinetic blade. I love this weapon. It is one of my favorite weapons in Fortnite history. If you played Chapter 4 Season 2, you know this thing absolutely plagued that entire season. Every player had to be carrying a kinetic blade. It was everywhere. And yes, while most players would parry shotgun with the kinetic blade and use it mainly for mobility, I think the melee aspect was okay. Again, in a season where the shotgun, the Havoc pump shotgun, was so strong, not a lot of people use the melee ability. I think that kind of goes forgotten about, right? When you hear kinetic blade, you strictly think about the mobility aspect of the item. And of course, we also saw this come back in Chapter 4 Season 4 as Thorn's Vampiric Blade as a melee weapon, and that was a really good item as well. This is yet again another example of one of those items that is an elite mobility item paired with a pretty good mythic ability, and combine the two, you get a really solid weapon. And at the number 2 spot, I'm sure you've been waiting for it to be somewhere on this list, that's the Shockwave Hammer. Up to this point, I believe the Shockwave Hammer has the best actual pure melee ability that we have seen so far. The ability to just swing the hammer straight on somebody and send them flying away from you is extremely valuable, right? Getting somebody out of your box, just hit them with the hammer, see you later, they're gone. It was really strong, not to mention the mobility aspect of the Shockwave Hammer is arguably the best mobility item ever. I think you could make that argument. But up to this point, I think we've seen like the Kinetic Blade and ODM gear, probably like 70% mobility you would use it for, like 30% melee. But at this point, I would say it's probably even with the Shockwave Hammer, 50% melee, 50% mobility, and that's good. That's what you like to see. The problem was just both were extremely strong. Just the mobility aspect and the melee aspect put two extremely strong abilities together, and you get one of the best items ever. The melee ability from the Shockwave Hammer really stands out because of the area of effect. Somebody could be like 10 feet away from you and you slam that hammer in front of them, you still hit them. Like, you did not need to be right on top of somebody. And honestly, the only reason why it's not in the number 1 spot is because of how long the animation is after you swing into the ground. If you go to swing and hit somebody and you miss them, you are basically dead. To pull the hammer up out of the ground, it takes way too long, and so you're basically banking on the fact that you're going to hit somebody, because if you miss them, you're basically a free sitting duck. No surprises here, the Shockwave Hammer is absolutely insane. But speaking of absolutely insane, at our number 1 spot, you knew it was going to be on here, you're probably just waiting for it, that's going to be the Infinity Blade. And honestly, I don't even want to spend too much time on it, because you guys know how overpowered this was. It literally won somebody, I believe it was Psalm, the entire Winter Royale when it was added into it. Instant siphon on kills, you had a ton of health, a ton of shield, the dash ability, you could just like jump in the air. I mean, it was so broken. It should have never been in the game, and there's a reason why it will never come back, except for the LTM, of course. It just absolutely outclasses every other melee weapon that has ever been in the game. It was only in the game for like a week, I believe. The fact that this even made it through testing is just beyond me, and there's just no other melee weapon that stacks up against it. You knew it had to be here at the number 1 spot. So Chapter 5 Season 4 is just about 2 weeks away now, and that season is heavily rumored to be another Marvel season. And of course, with our first Marvel season, we got the introduction of the Marvel superpowers. There are actually 12 of them. And today I wanted to take a trip back in time in preparation for Chapter 5 Season 4 and rank every single Marvel superpower from worst to best. Remember, this is not every single Marvel mythic, this is just the Marvel superpowers, specifically most of them from Chapter 2 Season 4. If you guys go on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop if you would like to show some support for my channel. Thanks to everybody who has been using my code over the last couple months. It is a huge help. You guys are awesome. With all that being said, finally, let's just get right into this ranking. And at the number 12 spot, the worst Marvel superpower in Fortnite history, that is Black Panther's kinetic armor. Look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think this is a surprise to anybody. This thing is known pretty much to be one of the worst Marvel superpowers, and I would agree with that. Basically, how this thing worked is it had like a main ability, right, which created an armor which reduces the damage that you take for 20 seconds, right? So sounds decent. But the secondary ability is essentially useless. Basically, afterwards, the armor will explode, which causes damage to structures and players while knocking them back. That's basically useless. In my opinion, it's just not enough, right? It's just not worth carrying over the other 11 mythics on this list. There was no spot in your inventory with a season with an absolutely loaded loot pool like Chapter 2 Season 4. It's just not enough. buff doesn't do anything insanely well, and for that reason, it is last place on this list. And at the number 11 spot, and definitely you could make an argument that this should be the worst, it is Storm's Whirlwind Blast. And wow, I will be honest with you, I forgot how bad this thing was. After I watched gameplay, I mean, I was just sitting there like, who would ever take this thing? It is legitimately good for one thing and one thing only. That is if you are at a high surface where you can kill somebody to fall damage, you pop this ability, it'll basically blast them off the build and onto the ground, making them die from fall damage. That is legitimately 100% the only time you will ever use Storm's Whirlwind Blast. It does 0 damage, and all it does is just build up a storm around the player, and then it basically just pushes them back. It's essentially just a different version of an impulse grenade. That's it. It's really just a reskin impulse grenade, and impulse grenades are not great. We all know that, and for that reason, yeah, bottom of the list. At the number 10 spot is Wolverine's Claws, and I think this one is going to be a little bit controversial. These claws were not great, but the one thing that I will give them is they are incredibly versatile. The claws have multiple attacks. They allow you to do like a spin slash, which does damage to players and structures. You also have an air dash where you can dash forward with them. I believe you also ran faster with them when you had them equipped, and you also have a dodge ability, so a lot of things you could do with this. They also let you heal 2 health per second outside of the storm, so yeah, a lot of really good abilities here. And I'll be honest with you, I really hate to do this to these claws, but I really have to knock it so far down because of how hard it was to get these things. They could only be obtained by eliminating Wolverine in that Weeping Woods slash like Slurpy Swamp area. That is it. To my knowledge, there was only one set of Wolverine's claws on the entire map. And let me tell you, I hope the gameplay shows it, but eliminating Wolverine was an absolute disaster. This dude would heal his health. He was absolutely loaded on health and shield. You're just asking to get third-partied when you shoot this guy. And he can actually revive himself. So let's say you run out of ammo or something when you knock him, or you're reloading when he's knocked. He will actually revive himself back to health and continue to attempt to kill you. If these things just dropped out of like the Stark drones, I would put them a lot higher on this list, but for how hard they are to get, how rare they were on the map, not worth it in my opinion. And at the number 9 spot is another melee weapon, right back to back, is She-Hulk's Fist. And I'll be honest with you, during Chapter 2 Season 4, I was not a big fan of She-Hulk's Fist, but after watching some gameplay and reading some more comments and looking back on this thing, I actually think it's a little bit better than I gave it credit for. Look, don't be mistaken, I don't think it's great at all, and there are basically 8 other superpowers that I would take over this thing, but it's decent. These fists basically allowed you to repeatedly melee people and basically build up a combo, so that increases damage per hit, all the way up to 4 times, right? So you could hit somebody once and do 40 damage, then hit them twice and do 55, then do a third time and get plus 70, and do times 4 and get plus 100. So you can easily kill somebody with 200 health if you can combo all 4 of those hits together. You also had a leap smash, which basically dealt an area of damage where the players lands. You had a power leap, which like was a mini impulse grenade. It launches you into the air. You had a dodge ability, all similar to Wolverine's ability. You also had a healing effect, just like Wolverine's, right? So what makes me put this ahead of Wolverine's superpower is basically just the fact that these things were so much more common. You could get these by dropping randomly after destroying a Stark supply drone, and those things were everywhere. They were all around the Quinjets, they were at Stark Industries. It was not hard to get your hands on a pair of She-Hulk's Fists, and for that reason, it is better than Wolverine's Claws. At the number 8 spot is Thor's Mjolnir Strike, and I have a feeling some people are going to be upset at this. Look, Thor's Mjolnir Strike is just a glorified reskin version of a Junk Rift. There's no other way to put it. That is exactly how it is. And this is another item similar to She-Hulk's Fist that would only drop after destroying Stark supply drones. That was the only way to get your hands on it. And like I said earlier, it basically just acted like a Junk Rift. You would aim the hammer where you want it to come down, you would press it, and the hammer would come down, just destroying any builds in front of it, wrecking anything, and it would do 60 damage to anyone inside that like blast radius. So it's safe to say that this thing absolutely thrived on players that were in 1x1s. The problem is, other than that, this thing is kind of useless. If someone's in the open, you're never going to use this thing. If you're fighting somebody one-on-one, you're really never going to use this thing. The only time you're going to use it is if you do 180, 190 damage to somebody, they box up to heal, you pop this thing on top of their box, and they're dead. It really thrives in endgame because the cooldown was only 25 seconds, so the longer you survived, you essentially could just have unlimited junk rifts, right? Which is so good because you can just keep destroying build after build after build as that zone gets smaller and smaller, so really, really helpful there. It's not an incredible item by any means, but it's definitely not terrible. At the number 7 spot is Venom Smash and Grab, and yeah, this one is going to ruffle some feathers for sure, because I know how popular this weapon is and how many people love to have have fun with this weapon. I mean, you could literally just rip anybody out of their box. You just press it on them, it grabs them and just brings them towards you, as the name suggests, of course. And it is really fun to use. I'm not going to deny that. Just ripping anybody out of wherever they are and bring them right in front of you. Yeah, that's cool. But the reason why it's in kind of like the bottom 50% of this list is mainly because of the skill gap that it takes to use this thing. If you give a low skill player the Venom smash and grab, they will not be able to do anything with it. But if you give somebody, specifically a high skill player who knows what they're doing with this thing, they can thrive. I will say, I just don't like how this weapon is basically dependent on having another weapon to make it good, right? If you think about it, you basically need a shotgun or a high fire rate weapon like an SMG for this thing to be good, right? Because you're going to pull them right in front of your face. You can't really run this thing with like a slow firing AR or a sniper, for example. It's just not going to work. And one of the main reasons why this thing is just so good is because you can pull players out of their box unexpectedly, right? It's not that loud. There's no like time to react. You can't really hear this thing coming towards you, and all of a sudden you have to adjust. You can get totally caught off guard by a good player who knows what they're doing, and for that reason I think it's okay, but I think it's like only really good in a very few amount of the player base's hands. Other than that, I don't think it's great. But anyways, at the number 6 spot is Dr. Doom's Mystical Bomb. And look, when we're looking at this thing, take off those rose tinted glasses, take off the nostalgia glasses, because this thing is not as good as you remember it. I think in chapter 2 season 4, this thing got a lot of love and was regarded as one of the best, if my memory serves me correct at least. And look, I'm definitely not hating on it. I mean, it is in the top 50% of this list basically, but I mean, think about it. You hold this giant ball above your head, so you become totally exposed, right? I mean, there's no way around it. You hold this thing, you have to throw it outside of your box. Your whole body has to be outside of the box. But the advantage of that is once you are able to safely throw that ball, it does good damage. It does 60 damage, and it also gets the fire effect, which is huge, right? That's an underrated aspect. Now, fire doesn't really do anything, but back then, fire used to spread like, no pun intended, literally a wildfire. If you threw this at a house, you could burn the entire house down. It also deals damage on impact, right? You don't have to wait like a grenade for it to explode. It's just whatever it hits, it explodes just like that. And one of the key aspects that a lot of people forget about is that this thing actually cannot hurt the player who threw it. You can take this thing, throw it at your feet, and you cannot do damage to yourself. This weapon, of course, is best paired with something like a shockwave grenade, where you can just be above somebody and just rain hellfire basically on them with this thing. I do remember this thing being really good for competitive, especially. I think people would like throw it at the corner of the box and it would destroy the whole box, and you could easily either get in somebody's box or take their wall. And since you can't damage yourself using it, you are able to use it at extreme close ranges. It also is unlimited. You can use this as many times as you want, just like Thor's Mjolnir Strike. As long as you just wait for that cooldown, you can use it as many times as you want throughout the entire game. It's decent, not great, not terrible, and that's why there are 5 more mythics ahead of it. And one of those at the number 5 spot is Silver Surfer's Board. I don't think that this thing got the love it deserved when it was in the game, but after seeing items like the Nimbus Cloud, which are essentially just Silver Surfer's Board, and seeing how much love items like that get, Silver Surfer's Board deserves more attention, positive attention. I mean, this thing is literally the Witch's Broom, and people were absolutely glazing the Witch's Broom towards the end of chapter 4. So even if you haven't used this specific weapon, if you've used either of the previous items I just mentioned, you know how this thing works. You just get launched upwards into the direction you're facing, and you can cancel it, which is huge. You get instant glider redeploy, and you will get no fall damage if you decide to cancel it while you're gliding. It's really just great for everything you need to do, right? If you want to jump into a fight, you want to basically have your own portable launch pad, yeah, go do that. If you want to exit a fight, just pop it and get out. Or if you just wanted to reposition, you were getting shot at and you needed to get on high ground, just pop this thing and get above them. It was that good. And it could also be found in Stark drones, so that whole loot pool, and so that means it was relatively common. But it is not the best mobility we will see on this list. Hint, hint. At the number 4 spot though are Dr. Doom's Arcane Gauntlets, and yes, I do think that these are the better of the Dr. Doom mythics. And honestly, totally unrelated, but now that I think about it, I just saw Robert Downey Jr. get revealed as Victor Von Doom for like the new Dr. Doom movies, so I wonder if we will see a Dr. Doom collab in chapter 5 season 4. But these Arcane Gauntlets are so good for so many reasons. First of all, there was no cooldown, or at least for the Arcane Gauntlet attack, you could infinitely put pressure. You had infinite ammo on these things whenever you wanted. That is so strong, at least on the Arcane Gauntlet attack. The Arcane Gauntlet jump, there was only a 5-second cooldown, and basically you would get a 2-tiled jump boost, basically like a double jump. And these Arcane Gauntlets didn't do like baby damage. They were doing 35 damage. That is scar damage right there. They had a pretty big blast radius, but they aren't the best gauntlets on this list. With that being said though, even though they're not the best, they are still a a very good choice in Chapter 2 Season 4, and definitely one of the best superpowers for sure. At the number 3 spot, and I hinted at this just a couple minutes ago, that is Groot's Bramble Shield. And before Iron Man's Unibeam came out, this thing was basically known to be the number 1 best superpower the entire season. It was actually overpowered. It got nerfed a couple times. It was even taken out of the game for a pretty decent amount of time due to some bug issues. It was introduced, of course, with the Chapter 2 Season 4 update V14.0, but it was vaulted in update V14.40 and didn't come back until update V14.6. And take a shot if you've heard me say this before in this video, this was only available after destroying Stark supply drones. It's the only way that you could get them, similar to like 3 or 4 items I've already mentioned. And this is a really unique item, and if you don't know how it works, let me explain. Basically, when you use it, you end up becoming covered in a ball of brambles, hence the name, which blocks up to 200 damage. The ball also rolls faster than the player's sprint speed, and it's unlimited, right? So you have great mobility here, incredible mobility. Well, it's not entirely unlimited. It heals the player 3 times before the ball dismantles. It also blocks fall damage while you're inside of it, and you can roll the ball into a structure to deal damage to it. I mean, at this point, it's like, what can't you do with this thing, right? Yes, of course, most people used it for its healing properties and its mobility properties, but I remember like being in endgame, and if you were like hiding behind a tree or something, just pop this thing, someone would turn the corner and they couldn't do damage to you. You were protected by the shield. And it's not like you were protected from only one angle, right? Like something like the riot shield or something, the player can jump over you and shoot you from behind. No, this thing, you were covered, full 360 angle, you were covered. But I mentioned its healing properties. This thing healed 20 health every 2 seconds for 3 uses, so 60 health in 6 seconds. That is really good. That's 10 health a second. I honestly don't have many complaints about it. The cooldown time is also only 25 seconds, so for the game, you basically get unlimited white heals, you get unlimited mobility, and you get like an unlimited shield. It's crazy, honestly. But there are 2 more superpowers ahead of it, and at that number 2 spot is Iron Man's Repulsor Gauntlets. And I remember the absolute craze when these things came out. They had aimbot. That was the big thing. And I'm not joking, actually. If you go onto the Fortnite wiki, it literally says the gauntlet allows the player to shoot laser projectiles towards the enemy, which have a soft aimbot function, which guides them towards a player at certain ranges. And you might think that is OP, and yes, while it was very strong, the way they countered it is by lowering damage. This thing only did 20 damage. But besides like that aimbot feature, you also had a boost jump, so every 20 seconds you could jump a second time to gain altitude, right? And you could hover in the air, which canceled all fall damage. But let's be honest, everybody just used this for the aimbot effect. And people definitely did use this thing. I mean, it was dropped by Iron Man at Stark Industries, which we all know was 100% the most popular POI that entire season, so these things were highly sought after. I think these things become incredibly good, especially when you pair them with another item. Once you're able to get above somebody and they have no idea where like your missiles are coming from, you're able to just lock on, just keep hovering in the air, and just destroy them. It's that simple. I think these things were incredible. Even though they had been nerfed a couple times, I still think they're very good, and I would like to see them come back in Chapter 5 Season 4. But they are not the best Iron Man superpower in Chapter 2 Season 4. That would go to Iron Man's Unibeam, which is our number 1 spot on this list. I honestly don't think there's any argument here. I have talked about how much I like the Unibeam in the past. It is such a stark difference, no pun intended there, you see what I did, between the number 1 spot and the rest of this list. This thing was no doubt, when I was making this list and I was typing up the list in a document, this thing was absolutely number 1 right away. And this thing was entirely the precursor to the railgun. You may not have ever used this thing, but if you use the railgun, you know what the Unibeam does. If you were lucky enough to walk out of Stark Industries with the Unibeam and the Repulsor Gauntlets, you were basically unstoppable for the entire game. There was nobody that was going to take you down. And there is one key aspect here which basically separates the Unibeam from everything, and that is because it would shoot the laser, which by the way does 90 damage, but it would shoot it through 2 layers of structures, not just one. So everybody knows to counter the railgun, you would place a wall and then you would place a stair, because the railgun would only go through 1 structure, but this would go through 2. So even if you were behind a wall and a stair, you could still be hit by the Unibeam. So really, you didn't have enough time once somebody popped this thing to build 3 layers of walls. You were basically going to get instant hit. And it's basically like getting hit with a sniper shot. 90 damage is nothing to scoffle about. That is really good. While it did have a cooldown of 35 seconds, which is the longest of any of the superpowers on this list, you can see why they had to do that. But even though there is a cooldown, it is unlimited, so you did have an unlimited railgun for the entire game. And for all of the aforementioned reasons, and even more that I'm sure I'm forgetting, the Unibeam is the number 1 spot on this list. It's the best Marvel superpower of all time. Now, on this channel, I have basically ranked every single class of weapon. Go watch those videos if you haven't already, but one class of weapons fell through the crack, and that is launchers. I guess I just just totally forgot to make this video, so here I am now bringing you guys ranking every single launcher from worst to best. While this is a list about explosive weapons exclusively, I will not be counting any grenades here. It is specifically just going to be rocket launchers, or really any launchers for that matter. You guys will see what I mean. If you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave it a like and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop. Thank you to all of you who have been consistently using it over the last couple months. You guys are amazing. With that all being said, let's get right into this. And at the number 16 spot, the worst launcher in my opinion is the Anvil rocket launcher. And with most lists that I do on this channel, it's really easy to pick the best and pick the worst, but it wasn't that easy here. I mean, think about it. The Anvil rocket launcher isn't terrible. While yes, I do have it at the worst, it's not horrible. The problem is it's only good at one thing and one thing only, and that is destroying vehicles. But it is absolutely just way too situational. You might use this one time in a game if you're lucky. Other than that, you're never going to use it. You're probably never going to do any damage to players with this thing, and 9 out of 10 times I will never even touch this weapon. And I think a lot of people agree with that. At the number 15 spot is the Big Chill. This is the first exotic on this list, and it's a really weird launcher because it actually does no damage. Instead, it gives you the frozen feet effect. And yes, before you comment it down below, I do know there was a time in competitive when the Big Chill was like the best weapon because it could be used through walls essentially. Like you could shoot the grenade on one side of the wall and then would hit the player on the other side of the wall, but that is really an exploit. I don't think it's intended to be like that. And it's really only good for one thing, just mobility. Just shoot it at your feet down a hill and there you go. You're never going to use this against anybody. It's almost useless, but just like the Anvil rocket launcher, can be used in one specific way. At the number 14 spot is the Recycler, and I can't believe that it's not the worst, and somehow there are 2 weapons that are worse than it. But yeah, the Recycler is not only just one of the worst explosive weapons of all time, it's one of the worst weapons of all time. I mean, let's be honest, average chapter 2 season 6 weapon here, right? It's a good idea, I guess. You can basically just hold the weapon on like a tree or something, and then that would become your ammo. Just a really bad area of effect. Decent damage, I guess, but there's just no reason why you would ever take the Recycler, right? There are just so many better options, right? And the gameplay will speak for itself. The Recycler is not that guy. At the number 13 spot is the Guided Missile, and I have a feeling this is going to surprise some people. And I recently just talked about the Guided Missile when I talked about some of Fortnite's biggest nerfs of all time. Shameless plug here. Go check that one out if you haven't already. And yeah, I mean, while this thing launched in an absolutely really broken state, they just absolutely nerfed the life out of this thing. They sucked all the life out of the Guided Missile. Go look at the stats. It's absolutely horrible. And you just build a 1x1 around yourself. You have a ton of time. You can see this thing blinking from a mile away. You can hear it from a mile away. Build a 1x1 and you are entirely protected from the Guided Missile. Also, you totally leave your body unprotected. This is a weapon that has just aged like milk. In early Fortnite, when people weren't really building 1x1s that well, I guess it was good, but now just atrocious, and it probably will never come back, let's be honest. Sorry to all you Guided Missile lovers out there. I know there's a lot of you, but sorry. It didn't mean to rip on your boy there, but it's tough. At the number 12 spot is just the regular snowball launcher. And I guess I kind of forgot how bad this thing was until I went back and looked at the actual stats for Chapter 5 Season 1. Man, this thing was brutal. And if you're just as surprised as I am, I wouldn't blame you because the snowball launcher used to be really good and then they absolutely nerfed it in Chapter 5 Season 1. I mean, honestly, this thing could have made it on my biggest nerfs list. Just listen to this damage nerf. It went from 71, 75, 79, 83 to 48, 50, 53, and 55. A 30 damage plus nerf is brutal. And not only that, they made it so that the snowball launcher only had 4 snowballs in a clip, but instead of 6. I mean, that is an absolutely brutal nerf. This thing went from being pretty decent to really bad. The only thing it has going for it is that it explodes on impact instead of bouncing like regular grenades do. And at the number 11 spot is the egg launcher, another version of the grenade launcher. And I guess you kind of could switch around the snowball launcher and the egg launcher, right? The snowball launcher explodes on impact but has less damage, whereas the egg launcher does not explode on impact. It bounces like a regular grenade but does a ton more damage. And you also get the 6 bullets instead of 4, or rockets, I guess I should say. Look, 77 damage will get it done for a grenade launcher, right? I mean, compare that to like the 50 of the snowball launcher. That's pretty bad. While I guess it's not much better, I definitely do think it edges out the snowball launcher by just a little bit. At the number 10 spot is the burst quad launcher. This is the second second and final exotic of this list. And I'll be honest with you, the burst quad launcher was kind of hard for me to rank just because I've barely used this weapon. I can't even remember in my head a time when I've actually used this weapon. It's actually just like so forgettable, right? Like who's gonna go out of their way to buy the burst quad launcher with their gold, right? Not me, that's for sure. It's okay. I mean, it does 42 damage a rocket, and if you're shooting bursts of 2, if you're able to land both, 84 damage is pretty good. Again, like this is just the definition of mid. Like it's just so meh. And I'll just say something right off the bat here. This rocket launcher has to have the worst bloom out of any. I mean, you have to aim this thing so high. The bullet drop, or I guess rocket drop, is insane, which is, I guess, why I really didn't like using it, but still, it's okay. At the number 9 spot is the proximity grenade launcher introduced in Chapter 1, and still to this day, I have no idea why they put a scope on a launcher. And if you've never actually used this weapon, it wouldn't entirely surprise me. This is one of the least featured weapons in Fortnite history. It was only in Season 9, Season X, and Chapter 4 Season OG. That's it. It's a really unique weapon. The rocket doesn't like explode on impact unless it's right next to somebody. This rocket will literally just bounce around. It's insane. But it has that like kind of honing effect. I mean, if you've ever used this weapon, you know exactly what I'm saying. Just if you shoot it even near somebody, it will explode right next to them mid-air. It doesn't even have to hit anything, and it will do damage to them. It's a little bit more like versatile and mobile than some of the other launchers on this list. It's not your prototypical launcher, and I definitely think up to this point in the list, it is the best launcher. But it's not better than our number 8 spot, and that is just the regular quad launcher. Look, I'll be honest, I'll say it, I am not a big fan of this weapon, but I cannot deny that you can do some great work with this thing. And again, just like the proximity grenade launcher, if you've never used this weapon, that wouldn't surprise me. It was only featured in, again, 4 seasons: Season 6, Season 7, Season 9, and Chapter 4 Season OG. And this weapon does really good damage, 84 damage a rocket, and you have 4 rockets before you have to reload. So if you have 2 or 3 of these in a squad, you can just absolutely decimate any builds. If you walk into somebody in a 1x1 with this thing, just shoot all the rockets on top of their builds, you will kill them almost every single time, especially if you're in duos or squads and you have multiple. And as I mentioned with the burst quad launcher, this weapon has some serious bloom, I guess if you want to call it, with rockets. This has some serious arc. You have to shoot this thing high as hell, or else you are just going to undershoot your target every single time, which I don't really like. But I do think it is better than the burst quad launcher. At the number 6 spot is the Cybertron cannon from Chapter 4 Season 3. And I absolutely adore this weapon. It really hurt me to not put it any higher on this list, but what I will say is it does have a lot going for it. For one, the damage is incredible. You're doing 110 damage per shot, and you also have unlimited ammo. It has 2 charges which take 30 seconds to recharge after fire, so if you are able to use these strategically, you can essentially have infinite ammo on a rocket launcher for the entire game. As well as this, the rocket velocity, which is something that I haven't really harped on that much so far on this list, just because it hasn't really affected a lot of the weapons, but the rocket velocity on the Cybertron cannon was incredibly quick. So you would genuinely have people from 110, 120, 150 meters away third partying with a Cybertron cannon because your rocket could almost get there instantly with no fall off. It just shot a massive beam of energy in a straight line no matter how far. I will say sometimes your timings can get messed up with this because you do have to charge it up a little bit before you use it. It's not like you just press the trigger and the rocket comes out like a lot of the weapons on this list. And I don't know if it was just the area of effect or the splash damage, but I feel like I was always hitting myself with this Cybertron cannon. As well as that, if you're not careful, it was easy to basically like shoot yourself off of a wall or off of a ceiling or something because it did have that like knockback effect, almost like a flint knock, just to a lesser extent. You'll know what I'm talking about if you use this weapon, but I'm a huge fan of it. I love it, and I wish I could put it higher. At the number 5 spot is the sticky grenade launcher, and cut me some slack here because I did not play a lot of Chapter 4 Season 4 at all, but I have watched a ton of gameplay on this weapon. I briefly remember when this weapon got added, and I feel like people were calling it like one of the best weapons of all time. It was insanely overpowered, but after watching a bunch of gameplay, I think 5 is a decent spot for it. I don't know, to me it seemed like the common consensus was in solos it really wasn't that useful at all, but then as soon as you got into any of the team game modes, this thing became absolutely broken. And I was watching gameplay of people in squads and they had 4 of these and it was just unstoppable. It was almost like mech level bad, you know what I'm saying? I did look at the patch notes and saw that they decreased the fire rate, increased the reload time, and added a cooldown when swapping, so I believe the problem was was people were carrying 2 or 3 of them and just swapping between them and having basically 8 or 12 basically Semtex grenades or clingers before you even have a chance to react. So it looks like they tuned it down a little bit, but let me know in the comment section below what you think about this place. I'm doing the best I can because I did not play a ton of Chapter 4 Season 4. At the number 4 spot is a weapon that I guarantee you somebody watching this video forgot about or didn't even think that it was considered a launcher, more like a pistol. That's the plasma cannon. And yeah, while this thing is essentially a pistol, the official Fortnite wiki considers it a launcher, so it makes its spot on this list. I mean, what an insane weapon. What a crazy weapon. This is just the definition of Chapter 2 Season 1, all in a singular weapon. It's also difficult to like kind of explain what this thing does, so the gameplay will speak for itself. I'll try my best here. Essentially, the plasma cannon, like you have to charge it up a little bit, and then it shoots like a huge plasma ball, which like travels very slowly in the direction that you shot it for a couple of seconds, I believe. And it literally like destroyed everything, vehicles, it didn't matter. And if there was a player nearby, they would slowly get like electrocuted by it. It would do 33 damage a tick to opponents, and that damage would like stack. So if somebody was in a box and they were like trapped, the plasma cannon would continuously hit them over and over and over again. The main downside to this thing is, well, you only have 5 charges. There's no picking up ammo off the ground. Once there's 5 charges, the gun is gone. You just lose it. But I feel like the fact that it does have that much limited ammo should speak to how good it was. While the projectile was really slow moving, I felt like if you use this on somebody that was in their box, or if there were like multiple boxes, it would literally just penetrate all of them. It would go straight through, deal damage to everybody. The gameplay will speak for itself. I think the plasma cannon is really good. At the number 3 spot, and guys, it pains me to put it this high on the list, it's the explosive goo gun. I mean, what even is this thing? Why does this weapon even exist in Fortnite? And this weapon was only featured in one season, Chapter 3 Season 4. It was vaulted in Chapter 4 Season 1 and has never been seen again. I will say it has the highest DPS to my knowledge in Fortnite history, barring some other crazy weapons. It has a DPS of 320. Which is obviously a pretty insignificant stat for most rocket launchers, but I felt like it stood out to me, so I had to say it. I can't even begin to explain how like the fire rate or damage works with this thing, so I'm just gonna read it off the Fortnite wiki. Essentially, the goo gun fires a trail of explosive goo, which covers players and structures when it lands, and then after a short time, the goo detonates in the order that you shot it in. And also, if I remember correctly, I think it would like obscure the vision. Like if you shot it on somebody's face, it would like obscure their vision. I don't know, it is such a weird weapon. It shot this like straight beam of goo, and the range on this thing was actually incredible. If you just shot this thing straight in the air, it would go crazy. It legitimately might be the most unique weapon in Fortnite history, but I can't deny it was good. If somebody was in a box, they were absolutely eviscerated by this thing. This thing in squads was an absolute nightmare, and I'm glad it was only in one season. Honestly, there was a part of me that wanted to put it at the number 1 spot. I definitely could have, but it just slipped a few spots down, mainly because that damage wasn't instant, right? You had to shoot it, and then you had to wait for it to detonate. It wasn't like you shot it and got instant damage like you did with almost every weapon on this list so far. So there were a lot of times when you would shoot this thing, and then somebody would kill you first before it detonated, and then they would end up dying later on. All right, at the number 2 spot is just the basic RPG. I know there were different weapon models in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. I'm going to put them all in this placement right here, as well as the pumpkin launcher, because it fundamentally worked exactly the same. It just had a different skin. Yeah, look, I mean, this is a weapon that basically just rampaged the early seasons of Chapter 1 when players weren't great at building. If you had an RPG, it was like a guaranteed win. I mean, it's like the weapon you think about when you think about explosives in Fortnite rocket launchers. It is just the basic RPG. And this is a weapon with an incredibly long history. There are multiple pages of patch notes on this thing, so I can't read them all. Also, you are an absolute legend if you remember the common version of the RPG, which was removed like a couple hours after Chapter 2 Season 1 launched. But think about it. I mean, the legendary RPG does 130 damage. That's now more than the heavy sniper does. 130 damage is an incredibly powerful shot. If you get your hands on a legendary rocket launcher, 9 out of 10 times you're going to take it. And that should really speak for itself, right? While you don't necessarily get the spam ability kind of that you do with a lot of the weapons on this list, like the goo gun or just the grenade launchers, you get basically double the damage of all those weapons. And honestly, it is a close second place. It easily could have been on the number 1 spot. And just really quickly before I get into the number 1 spot on this list, I just totally realized I skipped over the number 7 spot, which actually was just the regular grenade launcher. I can't believe I legitimately forgot to talk about one of the main weapons on this this list, so let me talk about it real quick before we get into the number 1 spot. In chapter 3, I believe it became like they would explode basically on impact, which made it a lot better. I don't know, ironically, and I think some people may disagree with this, but I kind of felt like the grenade launcher was actually a skillful weapon. If you knew how to use this thing and you weren't just shooting it straight at the front of their wall where it wasn't going to do anything, if you knew where to land the grenades, you could actually destroy everybody with this thing. But I'll be honest with you, like, I don't think it's as strong as a lot of people think it is. While yes, you do get that good spam and you get decent damage, I don't think it's anything special, and it would have been right basically at the middle of this list at the number 7 spot. But anyway, sorry about that, guys. At the number 1 spot is the shockwave launcher. I don't think that there was going to be much of an argument there. It is literally a grenade launcher that shoots shockwave grenades. I mean, what else could you ask for? Not only is it potentially the best mobility item of all time, but it also can be used in very unique ways because it doesn't directly do any damage, right? It just shoots shockwave grenades. But you can so easily shoot people into zone. You can rotate to zone. If you're in like a jam and you're in a 1x1, you're not prepared, just shoot at your feet, send everybody flying. If you want to rotate with your buddies, just shoot at the bottom. All of you guys jump at the same time, you'll go flying. A lot of times when I would use this weapon, I would just shoot it at my feet, jump straight in the air, and just shotgun somebody from above. This thing had so many great uses. And while it itself, I don't know, is the best launcher, the fact that it creates so many easy kills and it's being able to be used in so many different ways means it deserves to be the number 1 spot. Honestly, I think you really could have put any of the top 3 at the number 1 spot. On this channel, we have looked at some of Fortnite's worst pistols and some of Fortnite's best pistols, but today I figured we put it all together in one big list and rank every single pistol in Fortnite history from worst to best. I do have to preface that there will be no LTM exclusive pistols on this list, so no exotic flintlock and no dual suppressed pistols. As well as this, different weapon models will still count for the same weapon. So for example, the revolver has its new version and its old version. I'm just going to put that in one spot for the revolver. Same thing with like the regular pistol. Of course, the common through rare version looks different than the purple from legendary version. They'll be in the same spot, as well as the old and new deagle. If you go on to enjoy this video, be sure to leave this video a like and use code TYFRYZ in the Fortnite item shop to help support the content that I make here on my YouTube channel. With that all being said, let's get right into it. At our 21st spot on this list, the worst pistol in Fortnite history, it's the Primal pistol. I asked you guys in a community post, what do you guys think is the worst pistol of all time? And the overwhelming majority was the Primal pistol. Be sure to subscribe if you want to participate in those community events that I'll put up every so often. But regardless, this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. These Chapter 2 Season 6 weapons all sucked and the pistols were no exception. The Primal pistol, for some reason, is a 2-round burst pistol with literally zero accuracy. The bloom is unreal, and the only way this thing is useful is at super close range where the accuracy doesn't necessarily matter and you somehow get lucky enough to hit both shots. This weapon should not need any more explanation. It is the worst pistol of all time. And at a very close second to last, at our 20th spot, is the makeshift revolver. Again, those Chapter 2 Season 6 weapons were just so bad, and the makeshift revolver is a little bit better than the Primal pistol, but not by much. I mean, you could easily switch around the makeshift revolver and the Primal pistol on this list. It really doesn't matter. The makeshift revolver gets a little bit higher for me just because of that ability with one shot to do over 100 headshot. Of course, one-shotting anybody with just base white health and no shield. But again, it was terribly inaccurate, and just like all the other weapons this season, it was so hard to even hit a shot. I'm not going to go on and on about these Chapter 2 Season 6 weapons. Everybody expected them to be in at least the bottom 3-4 on this list, so here they are. At our number 19 spot is the 6-shooter. And if you've watched any of my videos specifically about pistols, you know that I am a absolute known hater of the 6-shooter. I just hate this pistol. I just feel like there's such better options. I mean, think about it. When would you ever take a 6-shooter, right? There are some pistols higher up on this list that you can justify taking over, let's say, an SMG or an AR, but the 6-shooter doesn't really fit either. Again, I just don't see a reason why you would ever take this pistol, especially over any of the ones that are higher up on this list. I guess if you're really accurate and you have incredible aim, you're able to hit maybe a body shot and a headshot back to back, then you could do over 100 damage. But yeah, again, I don't really have much to say about the 6-shooter. It is one of my least favorite weapons ever, and a weapon that if it came back, honestly, it would be too soon. At our number 18 spot on this list is the scoped revolver, and everything I just said about the 6-shooter, you can basically say about the scoped revolver. Except for the fact that the scoped revolver, it's obviously meant to be used at medium to long range, so if you don't have a sniper, potentially I guess the scoped revolver could suffice. Which is honestly why it gets higher on this list. At least you know what you're getting with the scoped revolver. With the 6-shooter, do you use that close range? Do you use that long range? I mean, I don't know. It's got that close fire rate from the hip, but it's accurate at like some medium distances. I don't know. But I do see a world in where the scoped revolver revolver can be somewhat useful. Now, do I think anybody was asking for like a 4x scope on a pistol? Absolutely not. But with that being said, if you don't have an assault rifle, you don't have a DMR or a sniper, and you kind of want a long range weapon, the scoped revolver could be okay. Very minimal damage fall off, if any. But again, outside of that target use, I don't see why you would ever take the scoped revolver. And at the number 17 spot is the Nighthawk, and this is just the exotic thermal scoped revolver. And I'll keep it short and sweet here because I literally just talked about the scoped revolver. It just gets one spot up because of the thermal scope. The thermal scope is a little bit of a benefit, but not much, which is why it only gets one spot higher. Again, decent damage, great range, but just not very practical in a Fortnite game. At the number 16 spot on our list is the Marksman 6-shooter. And if you wanted to argue that this should be a couple spots lower on this list, like 14, 13, 12, I think you could actually make that argument. In the right hands, this Marksman 6-shooter could be incredible. And if you don't know, this is the exotic version of the 6-shooter, which does 4 times headshot damage. So it is literally just your base regular 6-shooter, but rewards accuracy to an insane amount. If somebody has full health and shield, you can eliminate a player in 2 to 3 shots pending your hitting headshots. But of course, that is a big ask. We all know it is not that easy to just headshot somebody. But we can't ignore the fact that a single headshot can deal up to 96 damage. So if you are in a box with somebody, you get lucky and hit a headshot, that's incredible. That's basically like a shotgun shot. But how many players are there out there that are able to effectively use this weapon? I don't think very many, which is why it gets kind of put down on this list, but I won't deny the fact that this headshot damage is incredible. At our number 15 spot, and you may honestly be surprised it's this high on the list, that's Deadpool's dual hand cannons. And they absolutely did Deadpool so dirty with this weapon. I mean, everybody was so excited in Chapter 2, Season 2 to see what Deadpool's mythic weapon was going to be, and we got these. And in practice, it is a really cool idea. Dual wield, all red and black like the Deadpool camos, and you would get shield back for every time you hit somebody with the weapon. And it's important to emphasize here, this is a mythic weapon. There is only one on the entire map at a highly contested location, that being the yacht, or more specifically Deadpool's yacht, I guess. But Epic Games put out an absolute generational stinker with these pistols. They were awful. And what they did with this pistol is they basically reduced the damage in half from the regular dual pistol. So these Deadpool weapons only do 21 damage a shot as compared to regular dual wield pistols, which are in the low 40s, 42, 43, 44. And they basically justified that huge damage nerf because you would get 3 health or shield per shot hit. But 3 health or shield is nothing. Think about it. You would have to hit 9 shots on somebody to justify getting back what you would get with 1 mini shield. I mean, it's insane to think about, but that's what they did with this weapon. If it was something a little higher, like let's just say even 5 health or shield per shot, it would have been so much better. But I think if you ask anybody if they would rather have these or if they would have just regular dual pistols that do double the damage but you don't get that health and shield back, I think 90% of players would take the regular dual pistols. Man, I can't believe how dirty they did Deadpool here. At our number 14 spot is the suppressed pistol, and I think this is the first real controversial take on this video. And I need to just say something here. Just because this weapon is in the bottom 50% of pistols, in my opinion, does not mean that it is a bad weapon at all. This is a pretty good pistol. And this is one of Fortnite's core OG weapons. If I remember correctly, I think this might have been one of the first actual legendary weapons. And its Chapter 1 through 3 version is very different from its Chapter 4 version, mainly because that is when it became a fully automatic pistol. Again, it is a really solid pistol. The only thing is the shadow tracker is just so much better. We literally have seen a better version of this exact weapon. So it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth when it came to ranking the suppressed pistol. Again, it is not a bad weapon at all, and a DPS of 195 in the legendary version is absolutely solid. But I just think at this point in the game's history, there are 13 better pistols. And at that number 13 spot is the Hop Rock Dualies. And these are really solid pistols. They do 44 damage a shot and also give you the Hop Rock ability. And as many of you know, that can be used for a multitude of things. I mean, pair it with a shockwave grenade, or it can save you from fall damage. It's great for mobility, or really anything else. So you're probably thinking like, dude, what are you doing putting it this low on the list? And honestly, I don't value the Hop Rock effect that much. And actually, I felt like it hurt me more in gunfights than it helped me. Like, there were a lot of instances where I was in build fights with somebody and I would shoot them, hit them for 44 damage, and then try and jump to take their wall, and I'd go flying off the side of the build because I forgot I had the Hop Rock effect. If it's ever happened to you, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I think on paper, this weapon is a lot better than how it actually plays, and I would honestly just rather have the regular dual pistols over this thing. They are still a very solid and very viable option though. At our number 12 spot is the combat pistol, and if you forgot that this weapon even existed, I would not blame you because I did until I did more research for this video. This weapon was added in Chapter 2, Season 8 and vaulted one season later in Chapter 3 Season 1, and to my knowledge we have never seen it again. And it launched in quite a weak state, but was later buffed, with the damage going from 23, 24, 25, 26, 28 to 23, 25, 26, 27, 29 in those respective rarities, of course. And the reason why it gets higher on this list than something like the suppressed pistol, where it has a very similar DPS, reload time, etc., is mainly due to the accuracy. This weapon was incredibly accurate, much more accurate than most pistols we've seen on this list, minus like the Marksman 6 shooter, you get what I'm saying. Again, just like most of the pistols I've mentioned so far, these are not weapons that you're going to want to take into the end game with you, but can be pretty solid in that early to mid game. With a high fire rate and tight accuracy, this pistol can be a substitute for assault rifle or even an SMG in some situations. If I remember correctly, it played very similar to how the purple and legendary pistols are from Chapter 2 Season 1 specifically. And with a 2x headshot multiplier, you can actually kill somebody in just 4 shots to the head, with full health and shield, of course. And at our number 11 spot on this list, essentially the halfway point, is just the regular pistol. This is one of the core weapons of Fortnite. It launched with the original game 6, 7, 8 years ago, and has basically been in almost every season since in some shape or form. And it's extremely mid, which is why it's in the middle of this list. There are very few times when you would ever take the pistol over some other weapons, but in a quick fight, you just land, find it on the ground, mix a headshot or two in there, you could get some pretty good damage off. As well as this, the purple and legendary versions, if I was ranking those separately, would be in the top 5 for sure. Those weapons are incredible. Of course, I'm referring to the ones from Chapter 2 Season 1, Chapter 2 Season 2, that time frame. But since I'm considering them all in one ranking, I think it deserves to be in this middle of the road spot. And cracking the top 10 here, our number 10 pistol is the sidearm pistol. I feel like honestly this pistol goes forgotten about, but this was the main pistol of Chapter 3. And it actually has a higher DPS in the legendary version than some SMGs do. And the fire rate on this weapon felt much better. If you have a good trigger finger, the sidearm pistol will have a DPS almost on par with some fully auto weapons, especially from Chapter 3. I think this is really the first or second pistol we've seen so far on this list that I think you could take into endgame and actually succeed with. I mean, think about it. At 31 damage a shot in the legendary version, you're basically talking about assault rifle numbers there. And with a headshot multiplier of 2 times, you could be doing some serious damage at 62 damage a headshot. This is a really underrated pistol, and if you wanted to argue that it should be higher here, I could see a world where that happens. And another really hot take here at the number 9 spot is the revolver. Of course, again, this does include the old revolver and the new model revolver. I'm putting them in one spot. And honestly, I actually prefer the old version of the revolver. And in the right hand, this weapon can be absolutely deadly, but other than that, it kind of struggles. If you give an average player, aka me, the revolver, I'm still waiting for the skill issue comments in the comment section, but you aren't really going to be able to do much with this weapon unless you're somebody like, I don't know, Ninja or Moist Critical, for example. Still though, if you are good with this weapon, you are absolutely able to dominate everybody, doing over 110, 120, 130 damage on a headshot. Those are some big boy numbers. It honestly hasn't been in the game in a while, if I remember, and I think it actually should come back. It's a pretty cool weapon, and I think this is a pretty respectable spot on the list for it. At our number 8 spot is the lock-on pistol, and in my community post, there were a lot of people saying this is the best pistol of all time. I don't think that that is the case, and let me explain. And of course, this pistol is a lock-on only. You can only shoot it when you are locked on to somebody. And I'm just going to read straight off the Fortnite wiki here to explain this pistol because it's kind of confusing. So if you don't know, the lock-on pistol has a tracking system, right, that's activated once the player starts ADSing. And this tracking system has a max range of 50 meters and puts a blue circle around the player's crosshair, and once the player enters that circle, up to 4 bullets will just charge up and all hit the target when the person fires the weapon. And if you don't know, the 4th bullet of that burst will always be a critical headshot hit. And because of that, this pistol actually has the highest DPS of any pistol in the game's history at 375. And maybe in zero build, this is one of the best weapons of all time, and I could definitely see that, but I am not a zero build player. I play builds, and this thing is not great in that game mode. And my problem is it takes time to charge all those 4 shots while aiming down sight. So if you really need to do some damage to somebody in a quick instance, you're not going to use this weapon. What I will say is this weapon really shines against players, especially in the air, because they they cannot counter the pistol shots, they can't build, and of course you cannot dodge bullets from this weapon, right? Once you lock on, you're locked on. Also, a lot of people don't know this pistol actually does have glint similar to a sniper, but not as glaring. And I guess just my main problem is that when you are not locked on, this weapon actually sucks. And so you can really understand why this was a tough weapon for me to rank, but I think honestly it is fair to put it within the top 10. And at our number 7 spot is the Ranger pistol, of course, from chapter 5. Again, there were some people arguing that this should be the best pistol of all time. It's not, but it is a top tier pistol. Also, let me just say something. The gold design on the top is so clean, and in my opinion, it really is just a better version of the sidearm pistol. Good fire rate, 30 damage in a legendary version, and almost 200 DPS is going to get the job done. I also feel like just in general, the entire chapter 5 loot pool, particularly the weapons, have been a lot weaker than we've seen in previous chapters, which kind of makes it better to use the Ranger pistol. Especially with the ballistic shield, pair these two together, it was absolutely incredible. And at our number 6 spot is the dual pistols. Dualies are really good, and that's because they are a high risk, high reward weapon. I feel like these pistols, as well as most of the other weapons on this list, are really good and best used when paired with something like a shotgun. If you're able to shoot a pump shot, hit him for 100, then pull out the dualies, hit both shots, that's like where this thing really shines. Using it on its own, you might struggle a little bit. Of course, you have that delay between bursts, which kind of sucks, and a noticeably longer reload time than almost every pistol so far on this list at nearly 3 seconds, where most pistols are around a second and a half. But you are trading that reload time for extremely good damage at 44 damage. So if you're accurate, you can really do well here. But another issue here is they only have 18 bullets per clip, so you can only fire 9 bursts before reloading, which if you think about it, isn't that many. But if you are able to do back-to-back headshots, you can be doing what, almost 150 if not more damage, which is just incredible. And at our number 5 spot is the hand cannon, or most of you probably know it as the Deagle. And as I just said in my video yesterday, this weapon has been through a ton. It used to be the best weapon in the game when you could instantly take anybody's wall and destroy any wall in front of you, but it's not quite like that anymore. With that being said though, the chapter 5 Deagle is still really good, and I like the ability to put attachments on it. And again, this is a high risk, high reward weapon. You could be doing upwards of 170, 180 damage per shot on this thing, but at the cost of a really slow reload speed. The Deagle is one of the most popular weapons, I would say, in Fortnite history, and definitely deserving of a top 5 spot on this list. And I should mention, it is the first weapon on this list that uses heavy bullets. So yeah, Deagle's a beefy boy. At our number 4 spot is the Flint Knock. Look, everyone loves the Flint Knock pistol. It saves you from fall damage. It knocks people off your builds. It knocks you back. It's a fun weapon, right? But it actually is pretty good. And as you're going to see in my top 5 here, I have a lot of weapons that are hit or miss. Either going to be doing big time, big shots, 150, 160, almost even 200 damage in a headshot. But if you miss that shot, you are in big trouble. And the Flint Knock is no exception to that. But let's be honest here. Most people use the Flint Knock for, let's say, mobility or trick shots or saving you from fall damage. You're not really using it for its like pistol damage purposes, but it is still a solid option whether you're looking for mobility, save you from fall damage, or just do damage and use a pistol. So that's why it gets this high on this list. And at our number 3 spot is the Shadow Tracker. And I absolutely think that any of these top 3 pistols, you can make the argument, are the best pistol in Fortnite history. The ability to constantly mark players, not only for yourself, but also for your team if you're playing duos, trios, or squads, cannot be understated. It is fully auto, suppressed, and gives you the ability to mark people. I mean, what else do you want from a pistol? This is a weapon that you can absolutely replace your SMG with. Particularly in Chapter 4, Season 3, where you had that super dense, super heavy jungle where it was hard to see people, this pistol was really good. Again, like I said before, fully auto, suppressor, and you get recon. I mean, it gives you everything. It is really well-rounded, and an extremely solid pistol. At our number 2 spot on this list is the Tactical Pistol, and this is an underrated weapon. So many people were saying this is the best pistol of all time, but I don't think it quite beats out number 1. With that being said though, the Tactical Pistol is honestly incredible and better than most of the ARs and SMGs in Chapter 4. And honestly, I would take the Tactical Pistol over every single assault rifle in Chapter 4 Season 1, and the only thing that I wouldn't take it over is the Twin Mag SMG. The Mythic Rarity was also extremely strong, and the fact that you had an augment where you could just drop one of these in front of you made it so much better. I honestly can't say it enough. This is an incredible weapon, so underrated and needs to come back. Just great damage damage, very accurate, very little bloom. It does everything right. It's better than the Shadow Tracker in my opinion, and you can make an argument it should be number 1. But in my opinion, the best pistol of all time is none other than the Mammoth pistol. What a weapon. I mean, what else do I say about this thing? It was obviously really solid on its own, but you could have a super weapon, a pocket shotgun, a pocket sniper, whenever you wanted to when you paired it with a couple of really good augments. In the right hands, and I'm going to venture out to say this pistol is not only just the best pistol of all time, but one of the best weapons of all time. At 99 damage with a body shot and make that a headshot, you're doing almost 200 damage with a pistol and a headshot. Think about how insane that is. Of course, that high damage comes at a cost, and that is a very poor fire rate at basically 1 because you have to reload every single time you shoot. And it also uses heavy bullets, so you can very quickly burn through 15, 20, 25 heavy bullets. And it's funny actually because as I'm recording this video, it actually just got added back into reload. So if you go into reload and you get destroyed by this thing, remember why I put it at the number 1 spot. It's incredible. You're going to see it everywhere because so many people love using it. I think it's the best pistol of all time.